Chapter 21:17. Dasan began to suspect that Kay or Lily wasn't sent by Ms. Isabel to supervise him. She was really unfamiliar with the City of Freedom Academy. Was she really not a student of the academy? Kay or Lily, how did you get in? Dasan couldn't help but ask curiously. Although the atmosphere of the entire school was quite free, the necessary security still existed. In theory, it was generally difficult for outsiders to pass the inspection and truly enter the school. Someone invited me to visit. Kay or Lily thought for a while and said, "But that person is busy now, so he asked me to walk around. Then I met you, Daphne." The cross-dressing young man was still not used to the name Daphne. He thought for a while and said, "You've seen the garden, the fountain, and the memorial hall of the Holy Maiden. Do you have any other places you want to go?" "I still want to." Kay or Lily suddenly shook her head and said, "I'm afraid I can only wait for the next time. Someone is coming to pick me up." "Someone?" The cross-dressing young man followed Kay or Lily's gaze and saw a young man standing in the corridor not far away. "Thank you, Daphne, for accompanying me for so long." Kay or Lily warmly said goodbye to Dasan and then ran directly to the young man in the corridor. Dasan was relieved. At least, he didn't have to continue this activity that would expose his true gender. However, that young man just now seemed to be the principal's secretary, Mr. Levis. Dasan couldn't help but think. So, Kay or Lily was invited to the academy by Mr. Levis? Where did Kay or Lily come from? The cross-dressing young man quickly shook his head. No matter where Kay or Lily came from, it didn't have much to do with him. He couldn't even take care of himself now. He would have to wear this for at least a few more hours. This time, where should I use the bathroom? On the way to the principal's office. "Do you know that person just now?" Levis suddenly asked. "Mr. Levis, are you talking about Daphne?" "Daphne?" LeVar subconsciously frowned as if he was thinking about something. "What grade is he in?" "I didn't ask you." Kay or Lily shook her head, then stuck out her tongue and said, "I forgot to ask. Am I not supposed to interact with the students in the academy?" "No." LeVar shook his head and said calmly, "It doesn't matter who you interact with now. I'm just unfamiliar with the name Daphne. There's so many students in the academy. It's normal that you haven't heard of some of their names, Mr. LeVar." LeVar merely hummed in agreement. The truth was that this was not normal. LeVar's head was filled with the personal information of all the students in the academy. It wasn't that there weren't any female students named Daphne. It was just that the female student named Daphne didn't match up with the girl from before. "By the way, do you have time to see me now?" Kay or Lily thought for a moment and asked, "When we came here, you told me that the principal was having a meeting with the board of directors. Is it over?" "Overall, it's endless," LeVar said calmly. "In fact, it doesn't have any substantial effect on what's happening now. But this tug of war is necessary." "I feel like I don't have enough brains," LeVar waved his hand. "Miss Kay or Lily, why did you come out like this? Won't Mr. Assakes ask about it? Boss went out at noon and said that he would be back very late." Kay or Lily said directly, "Anyway, there isn't much business in the mansion, so I sneaked out." "Then, there's no one in the mansion now?" LeVar asked suddenly. "How can it be?" Kay or Lily said, "When I went out, I asked Mr. Bertrand and Lady Nan to guard the door." LeVar said expressionlessly, "Theoretically, those two are strangers. I have to say, Miss Kay or Lily, you are so generous. There shouldn't be any problem, right?" Kay or Lily said subconsciously, "They aren't bad people. Besides, there won't be any bad people in the Holy Light Kingdom. We're here." LeVar stopped and looked at Kay or Lily. He thought for a while and said, "Miss Kay or Lily, what if the principal wants to advise you to do something? I think it's better for you to refuse directly." Why? Kay or Lily hesitated. "Is it necessary? It's just my personal suggestion." LeVar said calmly, "It's not necessarily a suggestion to be accepted. It depends on what you think. Okay, please come in." LeVar opened the door. The huge office of the principal was like a small greenhouse, and the roses were in full bloom. The roses were even more splendid than the ones in Rose Mansion's garden. The principal was sitting in front of the 3-meter-long desk with his chin in his hands. looking at Kay or Lily coming in. The principal even wore a pair of flat glasses today. The lenses of the glasses were glowing. The door closed softly. Kay or Lily subconsciously looked back. She saw that Mr. LeVar didn't follow her in. This maid of Rose Mansion couldn't help but feel nervous. How is it? Do you like my campus? Kate or Lily? The principal used a magnetic voice to ask with a chuckle. Do you feel that it's much better than a Sash's broken place? Of course. It can't be compared to the school. Kate or Lily shook her head and said, It's just that Rose Mansion isn't broken at all. It's a place that can give me warmth, Mr. Principal. Sorry, I didn't mean to belittle Rose Mansion. The principal smiled. You see, no matter how hard I tried and how many rose seeds I found from all over the 7 capitals, I still couldn't grow flowers with the same quality as Rose Mansion. In this regard, I can't compare to Asakes. Kay or Lily bitterly smiled. If Boss Asakes heard this, he would probably think that the principal is saying that he's just a gardener who doesn't know how to do anything other than grow flowers. He would think so. The principal smiled again. Arthaces, you've always known what I'm thinking. You've been like that since the beginning. The atmosphere gradually calmed down because of Mr. Asash's question. Kate or Lily's slightly nervous expression also began to become natural. But soon, Kay or Lily's spirit became highly nervous. The principal narrowed his eyes and said, Kay or Lily, do you want to participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony this time? What did you say? The maid couldn't react at all. The principal casually said, During the parade, just now, 2 Holy Maiden Reserve floats collided. Although the 2 candidates didn't get too badly injured, it's still inconvenient for them to move around. So, there are 2 empty spots for the ceremony. One of the spots has already been chosen, so there's only 1 spot left. I think you're quite suitable. How could she be suitable? Even if there's only 1 spot left, shouldn't she be chosen from the other Holy Maiden Reserve who didn't participate? Kate or Lily's eyes widened. Clearly, the principal's words were unbelievable. What, you don't want to? Kate or Lily clenched her teeth. Principal, please don't joke with me. I'm not a student of the academy. If I say you are, who dares to say otherwise? The principal smiled casually. As long as you sign this application from now on, you're an official student of the City of Freedom Academy. Moreover, you're also a transfer student of the Holy Maiden class. You're serious? Kate or Lily looked at him in disbelief. The principal smiled. When you stand on the stage of the Holy Maiden ceremony, you'll know that I'm not joking. Kate or Lily felt like her brain wasn't enough. She said in a daze, Why? Why are you giving me this chance? Is it because of Boss Asakes? The conflict between me and Asakes is deeper than the feelings we developed when we grew up together. The principal shrugged. In my opinion, it's more like an ill-fated relationship. I won't casually open the back door for that guy. As for why I chose you, he looked at Kay or Lily and slowly said, The reason is because you're a transfer student. There's no one standing behind you. I don't quite understand. The principal said the City of Freedom Academy is a very large system. In the long process of development, many capable people joined, and they gradually evolved into people with real power who can influence the decisions of the academy. You know, when a group of outstanding people gather together, it's hard to have a unified opinion. But what does this have to do with me participating in the Holy Maiden ceremony? The decision of the academy isn't decided by one person's words. Because of different viewpoints, it's often accompanied by fierce arguments. The principal smiled and said, Of course, we're not hooligans. We won't fight at the meeting table. However, the efficiency of endless arguments is very low. So, the board needs a more efficient solution through the Holy Maiden ceremony. Kate or Lily seemed to understand. The principal said, Behind every Holy Maiden candidate who participates in the ceremony, there will be a corresponding person with real power. The board of directors will be divided according to the final results of the ceremony. You want me to represent you? I don't need you to represent me. The principal shook his head. You only need to represent yourself. Who you want to represent will be decided based on your final results at the ceremony. I still don't quite understand, the principal said. It's fine. I'll give you 1 night to think about it. If it's really hard for you to decide, let's change the way we look at it. Then, take it as me asking you to participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony. In return, I'll enroll you in the academy and waive all your school fees. What do you think? Don't rush to answer me. The principal smiled. Think about it carefully. Of course, if you're really hesitant, you can discuss it with Asakes. Also, even if you don't agree, it's fine. It won't affect my relationship with the Rose Mansion. Then okay. Kate or Lily nodded. The principal nodded in satisfaction and called Laval. Then, I'll have to trouble you to send Miss K or Lily back, Laval. Okay. Miss K or Lily, this way please. Oh, the glue seems to be used up. Mr. Asakes shook his head helplessly. He was sweating profusely while fixing a leak in the room. Boss Luo was helping him. I'll go buy some. Boss Luo suggested. Asakes shook his head. No need. I remember there should be some in the tool room on the 3rd floor. Can you help me get some? Of course. It's in the room at the end of the corridor on the 3rd floor. It shouldn't be locked. It should be easy to find. Following Mr. Asash's instructions, Boss Luo quickly came to the tool room. He reached for the door lock, but didn't open it immediately. Soon, Boss Luo reached for the door lock of the next room. He opened the door of another room connected to the tool room. This was one of the dormitories of this welfare institution. In the dormitory, a white-clothed youth was standing by the window. Your Excellency Archangel, we meet again. Boss Luo smiled and greeted him. The white-clothed youth nodded slightly. I want to talk to you alone. At this moment, Miss May didn't even notice the arrival of the white-clothed youth. As the Archangel who ruled all the angels in the heavenly kingdom and the Son of Light in the heavenly kingdom, the white-clothed youth had such strength. But he couldn't hide for too long. Even a slightly strong wave would break his concealment. About the judges of the Holy Maiden ceremony? Boss Luo asked casually. The white-clothed youth shook his head and said seriously, It's about the Dong Remy village. Boss Luo said indifferently, I don't know what your Excellency Archangel wants to ask. The white-clothed youth thought for a while and said, Did your Excellency break the statue I left in the underground lake? I'm really sorry. Sure enough. The white-clothed youth seemed relieved and nodded. Once the Dong Remy village incident was exposed, with Jean, with Yu Ye's character, you have enough reason to be hated. I have nothing to say. Even if some of your origin was erased, you can only blame yourself. Your Excellency Archangel, Boss Luo suddenly said, You may have misunderstood. Misunderstood? The white-clothed youth couldn't help but frown. Misunderstood what? The disappearance of your origin has nothing to do with me. Boss Luo said indifferently, Because if I really hated your Excellency Archangel, I'm afraid you would have ceased to exist. The white-clothed youth's pupils suddenly contracted. Boss Luo said expressionlessly, If it was just a warning, I would have given it. Instantly, the white-clothed youth's expression changed slightly, and he blurted out, At that time, the saint's soul was destroyed because of you. Boss Luo said coldly, Since it's a private conversation, I'll say something that's only between you and me. The white-clothed youth said calmly, What is it? Boss Luo's eyes instantly emitted the light of chaos. Since I stepped into Dong Remy village, I've been suppressing a strange emotion. I'm still looking for a reason that makes me feel that the entire kingdom of heaven doesn't need to exist. The white-clothed youth's heart pounded violently. Under the gaze of the chaotic light, he felt suffocated as if he had mistakenly entered the deepest part of the dimensional void. Do you know? Boss Luo said softly, I only need a thought to make the saint light disappear from all the worlds. Impossible. A roar from the depths of his soul. After conquering tens of thousands of worlds, this was the first time in his life that he lost his composure. Faith, take away. In the roar, a finger snap sounded. The saint light on the white-clothed youth's body dimmed completely. All of his power had been sucked away. Before he could think about it, he found himself standing on the street of Freedom City when he regained his senses. On the street, people were cheering for the Saint Girl Reserve on the parade floats. People walked past him. People also squeezed past him. People even knocked him away easily, and he fell to the ground. From now on, all of your legends will disappear temporarily. Your Excellency, Archangel. The only thing he could hear was Boss Luo's words that covered all the bustling noises. Chapter 21:18. Even though he was pushed to the ground by the pedestrians on the street, the young man in white did not panic at all. As the propagator of the holy light and the commander of the kingdom of heaven's conquest of the myriad worlds, he had countless legends about him and had seen a lot of storms. He stood up silently and patted off the dust on his body. His eyes were cold and calm as he sized up everything around him. Is this an illusion, or, he analyzed and felt, even the movement of the air did not escape his eyes. However, this instinctive and clear perception of the surrounding environment was now incomparably sluggish. The young man in white frowned. He felt like he was covered in a thick layer of membrane, isolating him from the world. The pedestrians on the street were still the same, and the voices were still loud. People were coming and going, but he had been standing on the spot for a long time. The supreme order, the authority of the kingdom of holy light that he had activated countless times, also did not respond. After a few more attempts, the young man in white stopped his meaningless actions. He was still calm. He instinctively did not believe that everything he had was taken away from him, and it was taken away in a split second. The legend is gone, the young man in white muttered. My legend will not disappear. Even if only one child knows of my existence, I will still return. He slowly heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the saint's residence high up in Freedom City. Instinctively, the young man in white had a thought. However, he did not turn into light and leave as usual. He was still standing on the spot. The young man in white frowned. He remained silent. After a moment of silence, he chose to walk. Don't panic. Everyone gathered in a large, simple house. Dinner was ready. The children sat down at a big dining table in an orderly manner under Sister Celian's command. Tonight, we have 2 guests. Sister Celian introduced the guests to the children of the Welfare Institute. Sister Celia was introducing the guests of the orphanage to the children. There were far more children here than they had imagined. Other than Kelly and Diana, who they had already met, there were 13 other children. The oldest among them was around 14 or 15 years old, and the youngest was around 5 years old. Let's be thankful for tonight's dinner. Miss Nunn concluded and took the lead in praying with her hands clasped together. Looking at the children praying attentively in front of the food, Miss Maid leaned towards Boss Luo and whispered, Master, just now, your HP dropped rapidly. Boss Luo knew that he couldn't hide it. Of course, he didn't intend to hide it. Therefore, as a maid who could manage part of his time, it was easy for her to detect it. I bought some expensive items. Boss Luo smiled and said casually, Also, I haven't reached the warning line yet. Miss Maid suddenly showed a puzzled look. However, he soon returned to the arena, although the master's time was evaporating quite rapidly. But it wasn't the limit. Was it really as master had said? Still at the safe level. The true limit of operation? Only when the owner reversed time and met the previous owner in the past. However, to require the master's time to drop to such an extent to do something, obviously, it wasn't casual. While she was deep in thought, under the table, Boss Luo quietly grabbed Miss Maid's hand. Boss Luo blinked and smiled. It's disrespectful to the host to be absent-minded during a meal. Sorry for my rudeness. Miss Maid nodded slightly. At this time, the nuns and the children had finished praying before the meal. So, under the children's expectant eyes, Mr. Asakes picked up the spoon and tapped on the cup lightly. He smiled and said, You can start eating, children. Stop. This place is not open to the public. In front of the door of the saint's residence, the guard's loud voice sounded in the ears of the young man in white. The young man in white couldn't help but frown. He was used to being unscrupulous and free in the Holy Light Kingdom. He couldn't adapt for a moment, but he did lose the ability to manifest the Holy Light. Mortals couldn't just look at him directly. They could even touch him easily. His years of cultivation didn't make him angry in this situation. Facing the guard's obstruction, the young man in white said indifferently, I'm here to look for someone. Please inform Jerabel. Mia wants to see her. Mia. The guard was stunned subconsciously. Seeing the guard's expression at this time, the young man in white thought of something. Have you heard of my name? The guard shook his head directly. No. But you want to see Miss Angel Jarabelle? The young man in white nodded calmly. Wait a moment, the guard said quickly. This was due to the general good relationship between humans in the Holy Light Kingdom, especially those who worked in the saint's residence, which was like a holy place. Their moral character was naturally more noble. They wouldn't make things difficult for anyone and would even try to respond to reasonable requests. The white-clothed youth patiently waited for a moment, and the gate guard who went to report quickly returned. Moreover, he wasn't the only one. There was also a beautiful woman in the night, who was as beautiful as the bright moon. She also slowly walked over. This woman was none other than Angel Grab. In front of the door of the saint's residence, the young man in white stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking extraordinary. Seeing Angel Jarabelle, the young man in white seemed to have a touch of relief on his face. Miss Angel, this is the person who wants to see you, the guard said quickly at this time. Angel Jarabelle glanced at the young man in white and nodded. She waved her hand and said, Got it. I'll deal with it. Go back to your post, dedicated sir. It was an honor to be praised by an angel. The guard looked a little excited, and it was obvious that his mood hadn't calmed down. Angel Jarabelle didn't care about this. She just walked slowly to the young man in white and said indifferently, It's you who wants to see me? The young man in white subconsciously felt something wrong, and this feeling immediately turned into uneasiness. Who are you? Why do you know my existence? Angel Jarabelle's eyes were like torches. The guard who reported you said you called yourself you. The young man in white was silent for a while, and his throat suddenly became dry. Haven't you heard of it? Angel Jarabelle shook her head and said indifferently, I won't forget any name I've heard, but I really haven't heard of this name. No matter who you are, since you know I'm here, it means that things are not very simple. Tell me your intention, strange guy. The young man in white suddenly took a step forward. Stop. The next moment, Angel Jarabelle had already shouted in a low voice. At the same time, an invisible force turned into a wall, blocking the young man in white's footsteps. For the first time in his life, he was stopped by such a weak force. However, although he knew that this was only a weak holy power, it was like a fierce beast blocking the road for the young man in white at this time. He was stunned for a moment, and his mind was blank. All the doubts, uneasiness, and even the fear that he didn't want to admit after calming down all the way here burst out at this time. As if a terrible hole was torn in the depth of his soul, all the uneasiness and fear rushed out instantly, almost drowning his consciousness. How dare you? Overwhelmed by the uneasiness and fear, the young man in white lost control and shouted angrily, I'm Saint the Grand Master who rules the heavenly kingdom. Usually, at this time, the situation would change. Usually, at this time, the entire world would be shaken by his rage. Usually, at this time, the endless holy light would suppress all resistance. Usually, at this moment, nothing happened. At this moment, Angel Jarabelle opened her eyes slightly. After a moment of absent-mindedness, a trace of anger appeared on her face, and she shouted in a low voice, Sinner! Instantly, the power of the holy light forced the young man in white to kneel down. I've never heard of Saint Angel Jarabelle said with slight anger. The Grand Master who rules the heavenly kingdom is John, the disciple of the Holy Son. But who are you? With this crime of blasphemy, the flame of the holy light should purify you. This Angel Jarabelle seemed to be really angry. With a wave of her hand, a materialized holy light flame appeared in her palm, and then it bounced onto the young man in white. The moment the holy light flame burned, the young man in white was afraid that this would be the first time he felt the pain of his soul being burned by the flame. After a moment of absent-mindedness, he howled fiercely because of the terrible pain that accompanied it. What happened? At this moment, a light beam descended, and then a man in coarse clothes slowly walked out of the light. Seeing this, Angel Jarabelle quickly lowered her head. The man in coarse sackcloth said slowly, Jarabe, I can hear you calling for me. You should know that I'm guarding the birth of the heart of freedom with the other supreme beings of the seven capitals. I'm sorry, Your Excellency, Angel Jirabel said in fear. I didn't mean it. It's just that this person, she glanced at the young man in white who was being burned by the holy light flame. Other than letting out a wail when he was burned by the flames, this white-clothed youth was actually enduring the pain. He was even enduring the burning of the holy light flames without uttering a single sound. At some point, he had even stood up. What a strong willpower. John, it was the hoarse voice of a young man in white. How dare you? Angel Jirabel instantly stopped. The man in coarse clothes waved his hand, signaling Angel Jirabel to be quiet. He even waved away the burning holy light flame on the young man in white. The man in the rough robes looked at the white-robed young man with a calm gaze. He thought for a moment and said, I can see endless anger, fear, pain, and hope for me in your eyes. Tell me what happened to you. Poor child. What do you want me to do for you? Although the holy light flame was extinguished, the young man in white's clothes had been burned into rags. He had many burns on his body, and his handsome face looked abnormally horrifying. John, it's me. Mia. The man in coarse clothes pondered and then shook his head. Tell me, how do you want me to react to this name? Even you. The young man in white looked at the man in coarse clothes in disbelief and took 2 steps back in fear. Suddenly, he yelled, Impossible! Everything! Be quiet! The man in coarse clothes waved his hand. However, the young man in white didn't quiet down. He even burst into chaotic laughter and turned around without caring about the wounds on his body, staggering out of the saint's residence. Seeing the figure of the white-clothed youth stagger away, the man in coarse linen clothes revealed a trace of doubt in his eyes. My lord, why did you let him go? We don't know where he came from, and we don't know his intentions. It's very strange. Angel Jirabel said hurriedly. The man in coarse clothes shook his head and said, I felt pain from him. I saw a soul that needed to be saved. Perhaps it's because of the effects of the saint fall that he's currently in a state of extreme confusion. Perhaps he doesn't even know who he is. I'll go and catch him, Angel Jirabel said directly. No need. The man in coarse clothes shook his head and said, A person who is lost in his own heart's maze is the same no matter where he is. Now, I don't want to be distracted. If there's nothing important, don't call for me. After saying that, the man in coarse clothes turned into a ray of light and flew into the night sky. Angel Jirabel was stunned. She shook her head and looked at the mountain road down from the saint's residence. She could vaguely see the wretched figure and the intermittent crazy voice. She carefully recalled the name Me. She had never heard of it before. It was a pleasant dinner. After the meal, Mr. Assakes had to return to the Rose Mansion. He had been out for a long time. Sister Serene sent the boss of Arthakis and the other 2 guests out of the door. Thank you again, Mr. Luo, Sister Serene said gratefully. Boss Luo smiled and said, We are also grateful for your hospitality. I hope this place can accept more children who can't pray. Sister Celine's expression changed slightly. She instinctively looked at Assakes. Mr. Luo is not an outsider. It's fine. Mr. Assakes shook his head. Sister Celine heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. Be careful on the road. She stood outside the door and watched the 3 of them disappear at the end of the street. Sister Celine heaved a sigh of relief. She still had a lot of work to do at night. The orphanage's financial situation had always been bad. She had already agreed to a part-time job selling drinks at night. She turned around and went into the house. However, the moment she turned around, she heard some strange noises behind her. She instinctively turned around and saw a figure slowly walking towards her in the dark. Sister Celine was stunned. The figure suddenly fell to the ground and fell at the entrance of the orphanage. Sister Celine was shocked. She quickly went forward to help the person up. However, she realized that the person was a person with many burns on his body. Mister, are you okay? How are you? Hashtag PS1. Thank you for Boss Wudong's cuteness. I don't have any good poses anymore. You can do it. Equals PS2, 0/1, PS3, as usual. Chapter 2119. Mister. With Sister Celine's call, the heavily injured person opened his eyes slightly with difficulty. After the heavily injured person woke up, he immediately grabbed Sister Celine's arm, as if he wanted to say something. Mister, your injuries are too serious. I'll send you to the hospital. Now, Sister Celine said quickly. No, the heavily injured man struggled to speak, but he was still grabbing Sister Celine's arm tightly, as if he had more words to say, but in the end, all he managed to utter was a single word, hide. The severely injured man fainted again. Sister Celine could not help but open her mouth. She subconsciously looked around. Everyone had gone to participate in the patrol of the carnival at night. The surroundings were very quiet. There was no one around. Look over here. We must find him. A few voices were rapidly moving through the night. Their steps were extremely fast. However, they did not seem to have found what they were looking for. They had stopped at an empty place. One of them squatted down and wiped the floor with his hand. He frowned and said, "It's strange. Why did the traces disappear here? That guy had such a high degree of combustion. Could he have been burned to ashes?" His companion said abruptly. The one who squatted down to check said, "It would be best if he was burned to ashes. But that guy, forget it. Let's look for him again. Otherwise, we can't go back and report to the president." Okay. His companions quickly responded and immediately scattered, each of them heading in different directions to search for him. After a while, the curtains next to the back door of the Informal Welfare Institute were pulled open slightly. Sister Celine carefully observed the situation outside. She looked for a while and tried to keep herself calm. She even insisted that the lights in the house were off. Suddenly, one of the figures who left turned back. Sister Celine quickly covered her mouth with her hand. She saw the guy who turned back and walked around the area before leaving. Sister Celine heaved a sigh of relief. She lowered her head and looked at the heavily injured person who had been moved into the room. She couldn't help but reveal a trace of hesitation. She was afraid that she had gotten into some kind of trouble. But by the Holy Mother of God, she could not leave him to die. However, this heavily injured person isn't willing to be sent to the hospital. But if we leave him be, he probably won't last long. Sister Celen hesitated. What's more, Ms. Nunn seemed to have made up her mind. She gritted her teeth and hurriedly helped the severely injured person into the house. Then he picked up the phone. Celen? On the other end of the phone? The person who responded was Mr. Assakes. "Oh, have I safely returned to the residence? Don't worry. Are you going to work later?" "Mr. Assakes, I might not be able to work tonight." Ms. Nunn gripped the phone tightly. His face was a little pale as he looked at the seriously injured person lying on the chair. Hesitantly, he said, "Mr. Assakes, can you make a trip here? Something has happened." "Okay, wait for me." Mr. Assakes on the other end of the phone didn't even consider it. He immediately gave an affirmative response. Ms. Nunn hurriedly said, "If it's possible, please buy some wound medicine from the pharmacy on the way. It's best if it's for burns and burns. I need more." "Okay, I got it." Mr. Assakes nodded. "If there's anything, wait for me to come over." Then, Mr. Assakes, who had just returned to the Rose residence, reached for his coat. "What happened?" Boss Luo asked curiously. "Someone seems to be injured at the Welfare Institute. I'll go and take a look." Mr. Assakes quickly said, "What exactly happened? I'm not very sure, but it shouldn't be a big problem. I should be able to handle it. Kay or Lily, is she not back yet?" "While I was passing by the backyard, I haven't seen Miss Kalili either. Miss Maid brought the tea," Ms. Nunn said slowly. "This child? She sneaked out for a whole day." Mr. Assakes shook his head. "Forget it. She should be fine. She'll call me if something happens. I'll go out first. If there's anything else, wait for me to come back." With that, Mr. Assakes pushed open the door and went out. Just then, a figure walked in. It was the maid of the mansion, Miss Kalili. "Boss." Kate or Lily was startled. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. The moment she bumped into Mr. Assakes, she said subconsciously, "I have something to—" "Kate or Lily, you take care of our guests first." Mr. Assakes said without turning his head, "I have something to deal with. Don't wait for me if I come back late." Okay, don't worry." Kay or Lily nodded slightly. silently watching Mr. Assash's figure disappear. She sighed slowly, turning around and entering the house. The hall was lit up with warm lights, and they felt like they had walked into a warm world. The maid looked a little tired. Ms. Maid smiled. Ms. K. or Lily, I've made tea. Come and drink with us. I should be the one to entertain you. K. or Lily shook her head. Sorry. I'll go back to my room to change my clothes. Seeing Ms. Maid go upstairs, Boss Luo and Ms. Maid looked at each other. Boss Luo suddenly smiled. It's a little quiet. The servant girl smiled sweetly. She walked to the counter in the lobby of the mansion, turned on an old gramophone placed here, and put in a disc. It was the gramophone that Nan Xiaonan complained about. It didn't exist, but no one cared about it after it appeared. By the way, Nan Xiaonan wasn't in Rose Mansion at this time. As for her whereabouts, no one seemed to know. So, I became transparent. Only Mr. Bertrand was hiding in the corner, shivering. He didn't know whether he should stay or go out. Saintus, Ms. Yuye's eyes seemed to be saying to him all the time, nothing. Go away. I'll go get some water from Mr. Jacques and Ms. Jean to wipe their faces. So saying, Bertrand ran out in a great hurry. Mr. Jacques didn't wake up. He probably wouldn't wake up until Bertrand sent him back to his original subworld. As for the girl Jean, who was irritable because of Holy Fall, she also didn't wake up. Maybe the dosage of sedative that Ms. Maid said was not as light as imagined. A melody sounded in the room. The power of love. Her body shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, in the vision of the spiritual world, endless threads appeared in front of Nan Xiaonan's eyes. They all went to the sky above Freedom City and gathered somewhere. The place where they gathered was a dazzling light like the sun, which almost blinded Nan Xiaonan's eyes. Of course, all of this happened on the level of the soul and spirit. So, this is the key to the so-called Resurrection Day. Nan Xiaonan rubbed the bangs on her forehead and murmured to herself thoughtfully. She then said, Sir, give me 4 more servings of Invincible Level 3 Supreme Overlord Castle, and a small food box with a heat bomb. Oh, okay, right away. The boss shuddered when his name was called. He stared blankly at the woman who was squatting in front of his stall. She seemed to be eating poop for a while, and then eating it back. After going back and forth a few times, the boss felt that today was really a magical day. But he still had to do business. Although she could eat a lot, she was indeed a generous customer. A petitioner's crystal card was thrown on the table. Ignoring the boss's reaction at this time, Nan Xiaonan rubbed her sore neck and continued to look up at the huge light ball above Freedom City. She had no choice. The boss and Miss Maid didn't bring her, and they didn't even play the sandwich game with her. So, she sneaked out herself and used her own method to see what the so-called Resurrection Day was. To put it bluntly, she was looking for business by herself. The boss didn't lack a lackey like her. Miss Maid alone could arrange everything clearly. Nan Xiaonan even felt that she couldn't find a place to be a thigh pendant. It was safer to be a worker. Miss, the Supreme Overlord Castle and the small food box you want. Just put it here, Nan Xiaonan said casually. Then, she suddenly had an idea and asked, Boss, have you been doing business here for a long time? Me? The boss paused for a second and then replied, Yes, every time before and after the Holy Maiden ceremony, I'll set up a stall here. This way, the business will be much better. Usually, I'm in my own shop, not here. Oh, Nan Xiaonan blinked her big eyes. So, boss, you must have done a lot of research on the Holy Maiden ceremony every year. Do you have any opinion on this Holy Maiden ceremony? The boss said, What opinion can I have? No matter who becomes the Holy Maiden, it will be good. These girls are all the best. Nan Xiaonan nudged the boss's arm with her elbow and smiled with squinted eyes. So many candidates have their own supporters. Boss, you must have someone you like, right? Tell me about it. Look, I've spent so much. It took me a lot of effort to save this willpower. You saved it so much, and now you're spending it for revenge? I don't have anything I like. The boss was also a talkative person. At this moment, he smiled and said, But I've done some research. As he said this, the boss suddenly looked around and then lowered his voice There are a few popular candidates, but unfortunately, the odds are not high. It's not easy to make a move. Nan Xiaonan blinked. What did she just hear? Odds? Outside? Lady Nan instantly lowered her voice and asked in the same tone. Shoo! Lower your voice. The boss quickly said, there are a lot of security officers in plain clothes patrolling nearby. Lady Nan's eyes turned at this moment, and she quickly said, Boss, I've been a little short of money recently. I haven't been able to become a God's chosen one. I've been relying on the petitioner crystal card passed down by my ancestors. Sigh, but there will be a day when it will run out. According to the way you eat, indeed. The boss of the stall agreed with him. Nan Xiaonan seized the opportunity and said, That's why. Boss, if there's a good way. The stall owner frowned and hesitated for a moment before asking tentatively, Let me see your Tianming identity first. Originally, Lady Nan thought that the fake destiny system installed by Miss Maid was useless. She didn't expect that it would be useful now. The fake destiny system opened immediately. After the boss saw the words ordinary citizen in the citizen information column, he seemed to be relieved. The boss pulled out a stool and sat down. It's not a good introduction. It's more like gambling. Gambling. Although the City of Freedom doesn't prohibit gambling, it also doesn't recognize it as legal. Yes, I understand. I won't speak carelessly. Don't worry. The boss said again, You can bet with me. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth. Could it be that this guy was still a peripheral betting dealer? Is it safe? Nan Xiaonan showed a hesitant expression. The boss lowered his voice and said, It's safe. Why wouldn't it be safe? This bet is set up by the City of Dawn. Don't you know the City of Dawn? It's the 7 capitals with the most developed entertainment industry. And I heard that there's a big shot in the City of Dawn behind this bet. It's definitely safe. Miss Nan said casually, I heard that the Grand President of the City of Dawn is also attending the Holy Maiden ceremony this time. Could the big shot behind the scenes be the Grand President? How can it be? The boss quickly shook his head. The President of the City of Dawn, the manager of the 7 capitals, and one of the greatest people under the Supreme. How can he do such a thing? Are you going to bet or not? Nan Xiaonan thought for a moment and said, Then tell me first. What are the contestants? Also, tell me the odds. The boss said, The hottest contestant this time is Yulia from the City of Freedom Academy's Holy Maiden class. She also participated in the last competition and got 4th place. She's very popular, so she's a hot favorite to win this competition. However, the odds are very low, so there's basically no profit. What are you writing? I'm writing it down first. I have a bad memory, so I'll look into it later. The boss didn't mind and continued. There's another hot favorite. She's a 2nd-year student. She got 5th place in the last competition, just below Yulia. The last time she participated, she was only a 1st-year student. She fought her way to 5th place. Don't you think she's amazing? So she's going to be Yulia's biggest opponent this time. It's just that I don't know why she didn't appear on the parade this time. How disappointing. But her popularity is still very, very high. What's her name? Selen. Hashtag PS 1/1. Chapter 2120. Under the dim yellow light, Mr. Arthasheth was washing his hands in a basin. Sister Serene immediately handed him a clean towel and asked, How is he, sir? He doesn't seem to be dead yet. Mr. Asakes thought for a moment and said, I applied burn ointment and bandaged him. I also fed him anti-inflammatory medicine. His breathing seems to be much smoother, but it's best to send him to the hospital or the clinic. After all, I'm not a professional doctor. I've only learned a little about first aid. I think so, too, Sister Serene said hesitantly. But before he fainted, he seemed to be very resistant to being sent to the hospital. Mr. Asakes couldn't help but frown. You said you saw a few people chasing after him. Can you tell where they came from? Sister Serene shook her head and said, It's too dark. I can't see clearly. They seemed to be discussing something, but they were too soft, so I couldn't hear them. I'm afraid they might hear me. However, they don't seem to be from Freedom City. Judging from their style of dressing, they seem to be from Dawn City. City of Dawn? Mr. Arthasheth couldn't help but be stunned. It was not that there were no people from Dawn City in Freedom City, But the truth was, there were quite a number of people from Dawn City and Freedom City. Since the 7 capitals were open to each other, as long as one reached the entry standard, theoretically, one could change their household registration at will. Because of the free atmosphere in the City of Freedom, it attracted a lot of immigrants from the 7 capitals. If he still has the Dawn City style of dressing, he should be someone who just came to the City of Freedom recently. Mr. Asakes had his own thoughts. But the Holy Maiden ceremony is approaching, and there are a lot of tourists coming to Freedom City. It seems like this clue is still very vague. Mr. Asakes, why don't I tell the security office? Sister Serene quickly said. Mr. Asakes thought for a moment and said, don't be hasty. Even if I have to tell them, I'll be the one doing it. Besides, I want to wait until this guy wakes up before I make a decision. But don't worry. Mr. Asakes waved his hand and said, even if he wakes up, he probably won't be able to move with his injuries. I won't go back tonight. I'll watch over this guy. Sister Serene nodded hesitantly. Then I'll get you some blankets. Sigh, looks like I can't work tonight. Asash's boss smiled bitterly and said, it's all my fault. I can't sponsor you a parade this year. So Sister Serene shook her head and said, it's fine. I didn't participate in the first place. It's just that the school has already registered my name. Right, you have been here for so long, but you haven't had a drink yet. I'll go get you a glass of water. This was an excuse to temporarily leave and end the topic. Mr. Asakes knew what was going on, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded slightly. After Sister Serene left, Mr. Asakes had time to carefully look at the seriously injured person. When he arrived at the orphanage, he was busy dealing with this person's wounds and didn't have time to examine him carefully. When he came, Mr. Asakes didn't hear any rumors of a fire. But how did this person get burned to such a state? He looked at some of the items on the seriously injured person. Most of them were burned black, and there was basically no useful information. This is a paper box that wasn't completely burned. It was a box of matches. Francie. Grand. Francie Hotel. Mr. Asakes frowned. This hotel, isn't it? He wasn't a person who couldn't bear pain. On the contrary, the pain of being burned by the holy flame was far less serious than the injury he suffered during the battle with the Hell Lord. What he couldn't bear was forgetting his name. If his mind wasn't strong enough, he wouldn't have been able to survive until today. After leaving the saint's residence, he quickly woke up from his chaotic mental state. He had to admit that the disappearance of the legend was far beyond what he could bear. At this moment, he was like a homeless man sitting on the stairs beside a waterway in Freedom City. This place was quiet enough, and it was even far away from the crowd. The people were still cheering for the Saintess's float parade. It's impossible to completely erase the traces of my existence. After he calmed down, he quickly understood something. Through his contact with Angel Jarabe and John in the saint's residence, he understood the most important point. Substitution, or rather, a stolen concept. His legend was temporarily replaced by John. It was equivalent to saying that John was a double legend at this time. However, this was equally terrifying, because this substitution was a substitution on the level of cognition. It even distorted John's cognition. John wasn't just an ordinary supreme of the Holy Light Kingdom. John had 2 different levels. One was the supreme of the Holy Light Kingdom, and the other was the saint. The other was the level that could exist in the Garden of Eden in the Heavenly Kingdom. It was equivalent to half of the Holy Father, Holy Spirit, and Holy Son. To put it bluntly, John even had the ultimate authority of the Heavenly Kingdom when the Lord wasn't around. What was more terrifying was that if the distortion of cognition even reached Father, he instinctively didn't want to think about this possibility because no matter how insignificant the proof was, it would prove one thing. The new owner of the shop really had the ability to make the holy light disappear from all the worlds with just a thought. This was something that was enough to make people collapse completely, even if it was just a question. After connecting with the actual situation on this level, the white-clothed young man couldn't help but feel helpless about the current situation. He truly felt the irresistible force behind the mysterious contract that existed in the Heavenly Kingdom. But is this a warning or a punishment? He had to go back to the source. and think about the reason for the current situation. However, at this moment, a few uninvited guests disrupted his thoughts. Of course, he was unhappy and even habitually wanted to block these disturbances. However, he obviously didn't have the power of the holy light. "We finally found you. It turns out that you ran here." A man among the uninvited guests sneered at this time. "The degree of burning is so high. You are burned to this extent, but you are still alive and kicking. It seems that your willpower is more amazing than we thought." The white-clothed young man frowned subconsciously. The moment of contact made him understand that the person these guys were looking for wasn't him, but another person who was also burned. He couldn't use his power, but he didn't want to be disturbed at this time, especially these creatures of the holy light kingdom that he had observed from a high position. "You are looking for the wrong." Before the white-clothed young man finished his words, he felt his body tremble and numb. This feeling was like being struck by lightning on Mount Olympus. He instantly lost control of his body and collapsed on the ground. He only had time to see that one of the uninvited guests was holding a taser in his hand at this time. The great Lord of the heavenly kingdom, the archangel who ruled all the angels, was knocked down by a taser. Even the extreme humiliation couldn't explain his complicated feelings at this moment. He is still awake? It seems that his willpower is really tenacious. Another burst of electric current stimulation. In the twitching of his body, the white-clothed young man clenched his teeth and held the other person's arm tightly. But under the continuous twitching of his body, the white-clothed young man finally lost consciousness. Without the legend and the holy light, his body was far more fragile than he had imagined. Phew, what a tough guy. Seeing that the man had completely fainted, the guy holding the stun baton slowly breathed a sigh of relief. If he wasn't tough, how could he run out with such a high degree of burning? Another uninvited guest said indifferently. "But this guy looks a bit different. He is burned to this extent. Isn't it normal that you can't recognize him?" The companion shook his head and said, "Okay, don't waste time. Hurry up and take this guy back." In a distant, unknown place, there was such a holy city. Today was the day of pilgrimage in the holy city. Devout believers from all over the world were now approaching the church of the holy city in a kneeling manner. The believers were calling the names of omnipotence, righteousness, majesty, holiness, faithfulness, compassion, justice, and the unique in their hearts. At this moment, the entire holy city seemed to be shrouded in a layer of hazy light. Even space seemed to be vaguely chanting the gospel. Faith is really a good thing. At this moment, on a mountain peak outside the holy city, someone was sitting on a big rock at the end of the mountain peak. It was an old man with a decaying aura all over his body. His age was even beyond the limit of what people could imagine. Even only a few silver-white hairs stayed on the layers of his scalp. Beside the old man stood a man with black goat horns and a large number of flesh-colored tattoos on his face. At this moment, a middle-aged man with a beard and a white robe climbed up the mountain barefoot. The man quickly came to the side of the old man who was about to die. The middle-aged man in white robe first looked at the old man sitting on the rock, then looked at the man with black goat horns next to him. He frowned slightly, but his expression soon returned to normal. The man with black goat horns sneered at this moment, looking at the middle-aged man in white robe with a provocative gaze. But whether it was the middle-aged man in white robe, the man with black goat horns, or the old man who seemed to be about to die, they didn't make a sound at this moment. After a long time, the old man said slowly, "You came earlier than I thought. Among them, you're also the first to come." The middle-aged man in white robe said slowly, "You're also much older than I thought. It's also the first time I know that you can also age to this extent." The old man didn't seem to care about these sarcastic words. He even smiled and said, "Not only am I old, my life won't last for long. The current me is just a remnant." The middle-aged man in white robe couldn't help but frown. "My feeling tells me that you're not joking. I've never joked with you before. You know that." The middle-aged man in white robe was silent. After a long time, he said expressionlessly, "Why did you give up everything? You have no reason to give up." "Yes, why did you give up everything?" The old man's eyes dimmed. I really don't have a reason to give up. But the reality is, I did give up, and it's in the most unequal way. The middle-aged man in white robes said, "What do you want to do?" "Then what about you? What do you want to do?" The old man's eyes suddenly regained a trace of light. "You came here. It's almost the same as giving up everything, giving up countless people in the world who believe in you." "I didn't give up." The middle-aged man in white robe said indifferently, "That's why I came." The old man smiled indifferently. "I just said that belief is a good thing. Enough belief can even make miracles happen, making the impossible possible. But now it seems that belief is also a bad thing. It needs to make the impossible possible, so naturally, it will force you to do the impossible. They think that you're omnipotent, unique, so you can only continue to climb to become a true omnipotent. The power of belief made you, and at the same time, dominated you." The middle-aged man in white robe didn't think so. He looked at the old man with merciful eyes. "You're waiting for someone." The middle-aged man in white robe suddenly said, "But you're not waiting for me, nor are you waiting for the others. Who are you waiting for? Waiting for the person who took everything from you? He seems to be in the holy light kingdom now." The old man said, "What do you think he will do in the holy light kingdom?" The middle-aged man in white robe said indifferently, "No matter what he wants to do, I also trust my children. They may suffer, but they can also grow. As long as I'm here, they can't grow." "What a heartless parent." The old man smiled indifferently, then he shook his head. "However, I'm not waiting for him." "Then who are you waiting for?" The old man raised his head, his eyes flickering, and said softly, "That person, his name is Famine." This was a name that the middle-aged man in white robe had never heard of. This old man in front of him had too many secrets, even if he looked so weak now. While he was pondering, the middle-aged man in white robe suddenly found an open space near the old man and sat down on the ground casually. He didn't wait, because there was no path for him to take. This was the end. This was the first subworld to appear since the birth of the dimensional void. "Anyway, we have to wait for someone, and we still have time," the old man suddenly suggested. "How about we play cards?" The middle-aged man in white robe didn't want to talk to the old man. Chapter 21:21. Soon, Mr. Asakes came out of the orphanage. Sister Celine was surprised, but Mr. Asakes promised that he would be back soon and asked her to prepare supper. Not long after, Mr. Athanasius arrived in front of a hotel, the Hotel Francie. He took out the box of matches from his pocket and compared it with the logo printed on the box. It was the hotel's logo. Was the guy who was seriously injured a resident of this hotel? Mr. Asakes walked to the counter with doubts in his mind. However, he was told that there were no more rooms available tonight. Due to the Holy Maiden ceremony, the hotel was fully booked. "Then I have no choice. Can I rest in the lobby?" Mr. Asakes asked casually. "No problem, sir. I'll get you a glass of water." The girl at the front desk smiled. Mr. Asakes took a newspaper from the lounge and started reading. He felt that he might be too sensitive, but his intuition told him that he might find something new if he stayed. About half an hour later, Mr. Athanasius was surprised to see a group of people walking in. It was the president of the City of Dawn. Mr. Asakes frowned as he watched the man with white eyeshadow walk into the elevator under the protection of a group of guards. "So, this is where the president is staying?" Sister Celine said that the people who followed the seriously injured man were wearing clothes with the style of Dawn City. "It shouldn't be that coincidental." Mr. Asakes put down the newspaper and looked at the floor number of the elevator. He was deep in thought. Perhaps it was because of his natural sense of touch. Mr. Asakes quickly found a few opportunities to sneak into the elevator when the hotel staff wasn't paying attention. However, Mr. Asakes didn't expect that when he walked out of the elevator and appeared on the floor where the president was staying, he was stopped by two men. "Stop! This floor has been booked." I'm sorry. I pressed the wrong floor." "I'm so sorry." Mr. Asakes smiled embarrassedly and quickly walked into the elevator again. The two men blocking the way stared at the display panel of the elevator floor. The display panel stopped at a certain floor below. It didn't move for a long time before they finally retracted their gazes. What happened? Did someone come by just now? The door of one of the rooms in the front corridor suddenly opened, and a man wearing sunglasses walked out and asked in a deep voice, "Oh, it's nothing. A guy went the wrong floor. It shouldn't be suspicious." It doesn't matter if it's suspicious or not. Be careful, the man in sunglasses said in a deep voice before walking into the room. At this time, in a beautifully decorated hotel room, a man with burns all over his body was tied up and placed on the carpet. The man's mouth was even tightly stuffed into a ball of cloth. The burned victim opened his eyes and struggled a few times, but was immediately pressed to the ground by the other two men in the room. They even yelled, "Be quiet. D***MN guy. It took us so much effort to bring you back. You're such a troublesome guy. If you don't want to be electrocuted again, you better listen to us." Hearing that, the man didn't move. He just breathed in and out quickly, as if he was trying to calm his emotions. The man in sunglasses walked slowly to the table on the side and opened a long metal box. There was a syringe and a few small bottles in the box. "Do we still need to give him an injection?" one of the men holding the man asked in confusion. The man in sunglasses said indifferently, "It's not easy to endure until now. If we don't continue, we don't know when he'll burn again. Well, this dose is about right. This guy, since he secretly stopped taking the medicine, he must have taken it too hard." The man holding the man shook his head and said, "If that's the case, let him turn into ashes. I don't understand why the Grand President still wants to save him. If you can figure it out, then I'm working for you now." The man in sunglasses shrugged and walked over with the syringe. Seeing the syringe close to his neck, the man who had calmed down couldn't help but struggle again. The man in sunglasses didn't think so. "Look at you now. Such a beautiful face is burned to such a state. Why bother?" The burned victim struggled even more violently, but the two men who were holding him down also increased their strength. The man in sunglasses slowly pierced the needle into the neck of the man and smiled. "You've stopped the holy water for a long time, right? You may have some stress reaction after using it again, but you can even survive spontaneous combustion, so this stress reaction probably won't matter. It'll be fine soon. Welcome back to the real paradise again." The holy water was injected into the man's body little by little. After a while, a crazy convulsion began to appear on the man's body. The two men let go of him, and the man began to painfully grab his body at this time. His limbs even showed different degrees of stiffness and contraction. Stress reaction, is it that serious? I don't know how long this guy has stopped in private. I'm afraid his body has gone crazy from hunger. Oh, he fainted again. The man in sunglasses put away the tool and said indifferently, "Watch him. Wait for him to wake up and clean him up. He has such a high fever, and he still needs to spend time looking for a plastic surgeon." "Are you still going out?" his companion asked. The man in sunglasses said indifferently, "To pick someone up. The entertainment that the Grand President booked should be here soon." His companion opened his mouth, and he couldn't help but look a little nervous. He even said carefully, "The Supremes are all here. Where's the Grand President?" "The Supremes are all focused on something right now." The man in sunglasses sneered. "Currently, it's mainly the managers of the 7 capitals who are working together to deal with the Freedom City." As he spoke, the man in sunglasses looked at the phone screen. "Okay, the person is here." Mr. Asakes was a little helpless. The plan to sneak into the floor where the Grand President was through the fire door failed. The fire door had long been locked. As for going through the outer wall of the hotel, there was no such thing. This wasn't a movie, and the wind outside was so strong that people would be blown away. In order to not arouse the suspicions of the Grand President's guards from the Dawn City, he could only go down the back stairs and leave. When he was about to reach the first floor, Mr. Asakes stopped. There were 2 people standing at the back stairs of the first floor, a man and a woman. The man was wearing clothes that were obviously from the City of Dawn, while the woman was wrapped up rather tightly. Not only was she wearing sunglasses, she even covered her face with a headscarf. Yes, her figure was very good. Mr. Asakes couldn't help but frown. He quickly squatted down quietly and held his breath. After a while, the fire door opened, and a man wearing sunglasses walked out. Looking at the tightly wrapped man, he smiled and said, "You're very punctual, Miss Yulia." The woman didn't say anything, only nodding slightly. The man wearing sunglasses said indifferently, "Then come with me, Mr. President. He's already waiting for you." The woman nodded obediently again, and then followed the man into the fire door. As for the man who was waiting with the masked woman, he waited for a while before continuing to walk down. It seemed like he was planning to leave through the hotel's underground parking lot. Mr. Asakes was still squatting upstairs, but his expression was a little strange. He muttered to himself, "Yulia? Isn't Yulia someone with the same name?" Or, the more he thought about it, the more Mr. Asakes felt that something was wrong. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The change in light made Mr. Asakes raise his head subconsciously. "What? Didn't you see enough just now?" It was the man who should have gone to the underground parking lot. Mr. Asakes was shocked. He hesitated for a moment, and then suddenly greeted the person in front of him. "Yo, President, you're here." As soon as he finished speaking, Mr. Asakes instantly turned around and rushed upstairs. However, this technique of creating a diversion seemed to be too crude. That person instantly grabbed Mr. Asakes' clothes and pulled him down forcefully. "What great strength," Mr. Asakes secretly said. When he was about to resist, he suddenly felt dizzy. He was thrown over his shoulder and directly fell to the ground. Immediately after, the man pressed Mr. Asakes to the ground with a jiu-jitsu, making him unable to move. "Brother, is there a misunderstanding?" The man sneered. "Didn't you just say the president? If you want to see him, I'll take you to see him now." As he said, the man directly reached out and covered Mr. Asakes' mouth and nose. There was also a handkerchief in his palm. Mr. Asakes only felt that he inhaled a strange smell, and then he lost consciousness after a while. Even his consciousness was lost. It was already very late. The carnival that was held because of the parade had already calmed down by this time. The lights in Freedom City had dimmed a lot. However, the lobby of Rose Mansion was still brightly lit at this time. Miss May Kay Lily sat in front of the counter. She held her chin and yawned. "It's already so late. Why isn't Boss back yet?" "Miss Kay Lily, do you want to continue waiting?" Boss Luo, who was sitting in the resting area, closed the book in his hand and looked at Kay Lily. "Mr. Asakes probably won't come back tonight. Boss usually calls back if he doesn't come back for the night." Kalili had a worried look on her face. He looked a little anxious when he went out. Could something have happened to him? "I just called him, but his phone was turned off." "I see." Boss Luo nodded and immediately said, "But what kind of dangerous things could happen in Freedom City?" Kate or Lily couldn't help but be startled. That was right. What kind of danger could there be in Freedom City? Even if the door wasn't closed at night, there wouldn't be thieves. Maybe the phone just ran out of battery. Kate or Lily explained to herself, "By the way, Mr. Luo, I'll go clean up your room. It's so late, you should rest." Boss Luo said casually. "Yi seems to have already cleaned up the room. No need to trouble you, Miss Kay or Lily. It seems like I'm the staff of the mansion." Miss Maid couldn't help but smile awkwardly at this time. She immediately stood up. "Then I'll go boil some water for you," Boss Luo said at this time. "Miss Kay or Lily, you seem to have something on your mind tonight. Do you want to find someone to talk to? I may be a qualified listener." Miss Maid wanted to say something, but stopped. Finally, she shook her head. "I'm just worried about Boss Asakes. It's nothing." Then, Boss Luo nodded. "Good night, Miss Kay or Lily." "Good night." She watched Mr. Luo go upstairs until Mr. Luo disappeared at the end of the stairs. She opened her mouth several times but didn't say anything, although she did have an impulse to talk. However, she'd better not talk about her troubles to others. Boss Arthashes had said that he should try his best not to be an annoying child. What he could do, he should do by himself. It was still the basement of Rose Mansion. However, the circle array in the basement that was originally drawn by Miss Assman had disappeared. Miss Maid was now holding a tray and walking down slowly. She soon came to a table. On the table, something was covered with a large piece of black cloth. It seemed to be a big box. The servant girl casually lifted the black cloth that covered it. It turned out to be a cage about 1 cubic meter in size. Inside the cage, there was a small room. The cage house was like a Barbie doll's house. At this time, in the cage house, there was a little guy with a puffed-up face as if she was sulking the little girl with palm-sized wings. "Sir Meir, do you like this house?" Miss Maid smiled and put the food on the tray into the cage. The little guy grabbed the cage and shook it for a while. "You can't go out for now." Miss Maid showed an apologetic look. The little girl's cheeks puffed up even more as she sat down. Facing the food that was delivered to her, she turned her head away. "Aren't you hungry?" Miss Maid chuckled. "I added some minced chicken to the mushroom soup. It's a pity if you don't eat it." The little girl's throat visibly gulped. She glanced over, but quickly looked away. She even raised her chin. "You're reading on novel full. I'll come back tomorrow," Miss Maid said indifferently, and left the basement with the tray. After waiting for a while, the little girl looked around hesitantly. She picked up the bowl and gulped it down. But her tongue was scalded. The little girl even choked and kept coughing. "Oh, I forgot to tell you, it may be scalded." Miss Maid suddenly appeared in front of the basement door and said with a smile. Seeing this, the little guy whose tongue was scalded by the hot soup suddenly quivered. Then she grabbed the bars of the cage with both hands and made a crazy output. "Bad, bad, bad. Good night, Sir Meir." Miss Maid chuckled and left. This time, she really left. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual, 0 to 1. Chapter 21-22. Then, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Remia. The girls took the bus rented by the academy and returned to the dormitory. After bidding farewell to her companions one by one, Remia walked towards her room. However, when she passed by the courtyard, someone called out to her. "Dasher, did you wait for me here?" Seeing that it was her elder brother sitting on the bench in the courtyard, Remia immediately relaxed and excitedly walked to his side. "I heard that your tour has ended. I thought that you should be back soon, so I waited for you here." Dasher rubbed Remia's head and said, "I've brought back the clothes you ordered." "Really?" Remia's eyes lit up. "I was worried that I wouldn't be able to make it in time. This is great. Here, Dasher, I have something for you too." "What's this?" Dasher looked at the bag in Remia's hand curiously. "It's a specialty from a city of dawn." At this moment, Remia said softly, "When we were resting today, the president of the city of Dawn came to visit us. He even brought us some special desserts. I thought it would be great if Dasher could eat them, so I secretly took some." "Hee hee. You." Dasher smiled helplessly. "How can you be a saintly maiden like this? It's your first time anyway. It's just a sideshow. It doesn't matter." Remia giggled. "Try it. It's really delicious. If I was a little slower, I wouldn't have been able to get it. Those guys are really good at eating." While speaking, Remia licked her lips as if she was savoring the taste of the snacks. When a young man saw this, he told Remia to keep the snacks for him, but Remia insisted. Remia said that she could share everything with Dasher because he was her family. "Remia, if you see me during the saintly maiden ceremony, what will you do?" the young man suddenly asked. "Dasher, isn't it normal for you to support me during the saintly maiden ceremony?" Remia asked in confusion. Then, she put on a serious face and said, "Dasher, you don't want to see me that day. I'll be angry. I'll be angry for 2 months. I'm not talking to you." Dashio's lips moved, and then he patted Remia's shoulder gently. "Done? Tired from a whole day? I should go back and rest. I still have to participate in the second round of the Holy Maiden ceremony tomorrow." He had to be in good condition. "Even if you're just accompanying them, don't be the last one." "All right." The young girl smiled sweetly. "Remember to brush your teeth? We ate so many desserts today," the young man exhorted. He watched as Remia returned to her dormitory. Only when the lights in her room were turned on did he head to the male dormitory. However, he had just pushed open the door and entered the room. The young man's body stiffened. Inside the room, a tall figure was currently standing by the window. Dashio's lips couldn't help but tremble slightly. In the end, he lowered his head and silently closed the door of the room. The tall figure slowly turned around. It was Teacher Isabel, who was wearing a pure white suit. Teacher Isabel? Not only was he wearing a man's suit, He even tied up his long hair. He even gave off a handsome vibe. Teacher Isabel looked at the bag that Deschio put on the table and asked curiously, "What's this?" "Pastry. I bought some," Deschio muttered. He didn't tell her that Remia left the bag for him. "Oh." Teacher Isabel casually opened the bag and glanced at it. Suddenly, she narrowed her eyes. She smiled and said, "If a girl eats desserts at night, she will get fat." "I'm not." Teacher Isabel opened the bag with the pastry. She used her fingers to scoop up some cream and smeared it on her lips. Then, she sneakily pressed it on the young man's lips. A suffocating sweet taste. Deschio's breath stopped. His eyes widened. His body stiffened at first, then gradually softened. Finally, Teacher Isabel licked her lips and chuckled. "Now you're my girl." Dahir took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, "Master Isabel, if I agree to appear in the ceremony, then in the next Holy Maiden ceremony, can you really let Remia win the championship?" "What? As a senior judge of the Holy Maiden ceremony, do you think I don't have the ability?" Teacher Isabel said with a faint smile. "Are you doubting me?" I don't mean that." Deschio shook his head and sighed. "I just hope you can keep your promise. I will show up at the second round tomorrow. I will show up in the way you like. I don't like the way you look now." Teacher Isabel shook her head. Deschio gritted his teeth and slowly turned around. He took out some women's clothes from the wardrobe and silently walked into the bathroom. "It tastes good." Teacher Isabel chuckled. She picked up another piece of pastry and put it in her mouth. She began to eat it in small bites. As she ate, she finished all the pastry in the box. She licked her fingers as if she hadn't had enough. However, her attention was soon diverted. Deschio had walked out again. As Daphne, he appeared in front of her. Mr. President booked the floor of the Francie Hotel. In the dim room, even though there was a layer of gauze between them, one could still see a graceful back view. She was sitting on President Ballum's lap, heaving up and down violently. The president casually reached out his hand and grabbed a handful of red and white capsules from the box beside him. He stuffed them into his mouth, chewed, and swallowed them. "Don't you know who he is?" Amidst the women's cries, the president's voice suddenly sounded. At this moment, on the other side of the curtain, the man in sunglasses shook his head. "He's a resident of Freedom City. We don't have the right to access his destiny. What do you think we should do?" Mr. President's voice began to sound dull. "I suggest we keep him for now. There must be a way to open his destiny." The man in sunglasses thought for a moment and said, "Or we can take him in. This is the simplest and safest way." "However," Mr. President said, "do you think he came alone, or was there someone else behind him who ordered him to come?" The man in sunglasses hesitated for a moment. "I don't think anyone knows. Didn't Mr. Rondo come to the Dawn City before?" Mr. President's voice began to sound hurried. Soon, Mr. President heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, the graceful figure had already collapsed at his feet, breathing absent-mindedly. "These two fellows have been playing games on the chairs all this time. He is not an angel. He is just an ordinary person, sir," the man in sunglasses said after thinking for a moment. "We are also ordinary people, aren't we?" Mr. President stood up, but casually grabbed a handful of pills from the box and put them into his mouth. "Ordinary people shouldn't be on par with God." "Then this intruder used the holy water," Mr. President said casually. The man in sunglasses said, "Isn't it too wasteful? If you give me more time, I could take care of it." Mr. President said calmly, "In my opinion, there is no such thing as wasteful. There is only the difference between useful and useless. Do you know that if a precious thing is left unused, it's useless?" "I understand." The man in sunglasses nodded. Mr. President said, "Let's end tonight's entertainment program here. Send Miss Yulia back to rest. She has to participate in the second round of the competition tomorrow. She can't be in bad condition." After that, the president of the City of Dawn walked out from behind the curtain and headed to the shower. Although he was a man who looked quite old, the president's physique was extremely robust. His steel-like muscles even made the man in sunglasses feel ashamed of his inferiority. The man in sunglasses looked at the president's back silently. He looked at the huge coiled snake tattoo on the president's back. After a moment of silence, he looked away. The sound of water splashing was heard in the shower. The man in sunglasses said calmly, "Miss Yulia, are you done?" The woman was dressed neatly. She slowly opened the curtain and walked out with a submissive look on her face. What a stunningly beautiful woman, the man in sunglasses thought to himself. However, he didn't look at her. The president didn't like people thinking about his things. He really didn't like it. The sound of something being knocked over woke Sister Celine up. Miss Nunn, who had dozed off halfway through, opened her eyes at this moment and saw that the heavily injured person had already fallen to the ground. The cup was knocked over, and the water was all over the floor. "You're awake, sir." Sister Celine quickly helped the heavily injured man up. "Do you want to drink water?" "Wait, I'll get you another cup." Where is this place?" the heavily injured man uttered in a hoarse voice. Sister Celine poured him a cup of water. The heavily injured man didn't care about anything else and quickly drank it. "Are you feeling better?" Sister Celine asked with concern. At the same time, she replied, "This is a welfare home. Before you fainted, you fell in front of our door. Do you remember, sir?" "I think I remember now." The heavily injured man nodded slowly. "Thank you, sister." "Who are you?" Sister Celine quickly asked. "Why are you so badly burned? Why don't you go to the hospital? We can't treat your wound well here. It will definitely be inflamed. That will be troublesome." "I can't go." The heavily injured man shook his head with difficulty. "I'll be discovered. Then Sister Celine hesitated. "Those people who chased you." The heavily injured man nodded. It was just a simple movement, but it made his face twitch in pain. Sister Celine had never seen such a terrible burn before, but this person was able to endure it. His willpower was truly astonishing. Who are you?" Sister Celine asked nervously. I'm not a bad person. I won't hurt you. Don't worry." The heavily injured man said slowly. "Besides, with my current state, I can't hurt anyone." Sister Celine's expression softened a little. "But with your current condition, I can't guarantee that I'll send you to the hospital for your safety, sir." "No, please don't." The heavily injured man looked at Sister Celine pleadingly. "But I can go to a place. Please send me to a place." "Where is it?" The heavily injured man said. "Mr. Calvin's home." "Mr. Calvin?" Sister Celine was stunned and asked subconsciously. "There are many people named Calvin. Who is this Calvin you're talking about?" "He is a famous scholar," the heavily injured man said weakly. "You're from Freedom City. You should know." "I know." Sister Celine instantly knew who the person was. The person named Calvin was a famous scholar. The only thing she could think of was the great scholar that even the saints treated with respect in Freedom City. Not only that, this scholar Calvin was also an honorary professor in Freedom City Academy. Also, Sister Celine heard from Mr. Assakes that Scholar Calvin was his former teacher. Hurry and send me back. Too late, huh? Sir, don't pass out." How could she carry a grown man to that great scholar's home in the middle of the night? "Taxi fares are expensive. I can't go to work tonight." "Mr. Assakes, why aren't you back yet? Did you sneak into the fish pond to fish in the middle of the night?" The moment Mr. Assakes regained consciousness, he rubbed the back of his head that was hurting from the fall. He felt that his head might have been injured as well. He tried to stand up and look around. However, he suddenly saw a pair of bloodshot eyes staring at him. Mr. Assakes gasped, not only because of the bloodshot eyes, but also because of the appearance of the owner of the eyes. This was a guy who was wrapped in bandages from head to toe, like a mummy. Moreover, even though he was wrapped in bandages, blood could be seen seeping through many parts of his body. This guy was also burned. Mr. Arthashes thought instinctively. Even though there were many possibilities for the bandages, he still subconsciously thought of the burn wounds, because before he came here, Sister Celine had picked one up at the entrance of the orphanage. However, he didn't know why this guy was handcuffed to the chair. "Bro, were you also caught by them?" Mr. Assakes quickly walked in front of the guy who was wrapped in bandages. But just as he approached, the man in front of him, who was wrapped in gauze, suddenly struggled agitatedly. With an aggressive stance, he charged at Ace, but he was restrained by handcuffs and shackles, and could only shake the chair continuously. At this moment, the door of the room opened with a click. A man wearing sunglasses walked in directly. Seeing this, Mr. Ace quickly picked up a handicraft placed on the side of the cabinet and lifted it up. However, this handicraft didn't seem to be aggressive, so Mr. Ace quickly put it down. Then, he picked up something more aggressive, an ashtray. "Don't come over. I'm very accurate at hitting people." The man in sunglasses didn't say a word. He just casually took out a black pistol and loaded it. Mr. Ace showed a bright smile and slowly put the ashtray back to its original place. Finally, he wiped it clean with his sleeve. ######PS1. 1/1. PS2. Actually, it's that man who is cute. Chapter 21-23. This wasn't a matter of cowardice. This was a strategic compromise. Mr. Ace slowly raised his hands. "It's good to be tactful." The man in sunglasses sneered. Then, he threw a box to Mr. Ace and motioned for him to open it. Mr. Ace could only do as he was told. After opening the box, he found that it contained a syringe used for injection. The situation was so strange that Mr. Ace couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Sure enough, following the matchbox's clues to this place was too careless. "What's this?" Mr. Asash's face was full of surprise. He looked at the handcuffed man wrapped in gauze and said, "Is this a painkiller for this man? You seem to have a talent for doing talk shows." The man in sunglasses said indifferently, "Unfortunately, I don't have time to watch your performance now. Now, pick it up and inject it into your body." From the beginning to the end, the man in sunglasses pointed his pistol at Mr. Ace. The threat was always there. What is this?" Mr. Ace asked hesitantly. The man in sunglasses said coldly, "The manager of this hotel said that the rooms here have the best soundproofing in the entire Freedom City. It can even compare to a professional recording studio." "What?" Mr. Ace was stunned. Then, a loud sound suddenly exploded in his ears. Mr. Ace instinctively retreated the floor. There was already a bullet hole in the floor. His face couldn't help but turn pale. He looked at the black muzzle pointing at him again. He didn't dare to bet that there were no bullets in the gun. He could only slowly take out the syringe from the box with fear. Where should I hit?" The man in sunglasses suddenly frowned. Mr. Ace could only put the needle on his arm, but he didn't stick it in. Instead, he quickly said, "At least give me some iodine and a rubber band. Also, is this needle clean? Wouldn't it be easy to get infected?" The man in sunglasses suddenly lowered his pistol and sighed. Mr. Asash's expression relaxed at first, but the man in sunglasses suddenly raised his pistol again and fired 3 shots in succession. The 3 bullets actually brushed past his shoulder. They didn't penetrate his shoulder, but they did graze the skin on his shoulder. The burning sensation made Ace quiver. He knew that there was no more space for him to hide, so he clenched his teeth and closed his eyes. He grabbed the syringe and quickly stabbed it into his shoulder. That was where she had been vaccinated when she was young. Seeing that the substance in the syringe was completely injected, the man in sunglasses lowered the pistol again and said with satisfaction, "Next, feel it well. Soon, you will feel that the whole world will become different. You will even clearly feel the reality of this world for the first time." After that, without waiting for Mr. Asash's response, the man in sunglasses casually glanced at the guy wrapped in gauze leaning on the chair and then left the room. Mr. Ace quickly rushed to the door. He stretched out his hand to turn the doorknob, but the door lock had been locked again. He helplessly shook his head. At this time, he pulled out the needle that was still stuck in his arm. He looked at the guy with bloodshot eyes and suddenly asked in a low voice, "Brother, do you know what this thing is?" But the guy with bloodshot eyes? It was a grumpy brother who didn't seem to understand people's words. At this time, he was still very grumpy, or in other words, chaotic. Mr. Ace shook his head. He walked to the sofa and sat down. At this time, he quietly loosened his hand that was holding the syringe. The needle in the syringe? He didn't know when it was bent into a right angle. Mr. Assakes straightened the needle again and threw it on the table. Now, how to escape from this place? Mr. Assakes lay on the sofa, with his hands as his pillow. He looked at the ceiling of the room blankly. Suddenly, Mr. Assakes sat up and then stared at the grumpy brother who was handcuffed to the chair. Then, Mr. Assakes' arm began to shake like the grumpy brother. He even opened his mouth and began to make a low, growling sound. He was adjusting the growling sound until it was almost the same as the grumpy brother. Then he stopped. Then, Mr. Assakes began to rummage through the furniture in the room. He waited until the surrounding things were thrown down, then leaned against the corner of the wall. Facing the door of the room, he sat down. Ms. Nunn's last choice was a bicycle. There was no other way. The parade ended. People began to disperse. Currently, more than a dozen main roads were congested. She couldn't call for a taxi. She could only find a coat to cover the seriously injured man, then rode the bicycle all the way to the destination. Mr. Calvin, the grand scholar, was in a free city. Even the children who had just entered primary school had heard of his name and deeds. Mr. Calvin's residence was not a secret. In fact, Mr. Calvin, who had always followed the ancient tradition of ascetic cultivation, would have people coming to visit him every day. Nor did Mr. Calvin refuse to see any of those who came to him. However, Mr. Calvin always liked to persuade visitors to ascetic cultivation with him. In fact, not many people could persist in following the ancient tradition of ascetic cultivation. Over time, fewer and fewer people came to visit him. However, Grand Scholar Calvin still insisted on persuading visitors. Mr. Assakes told her all this, especially the saying, "Everyone you catch." Mr. Assakes is also an independent guy, isn't he? Sister Serene thought to herself. She could still clearly remember the way Arthesis rolled his eyes when he said those words. Although he was a famous Grand Scholar Calvin didn't live in a high-end residential area because he was an ascetic. Instead, he lived in an old building in the old town. When Ms. Selion angrily stopped the bicycle, she saw that in the shabby two-story house, only the attic was lit up. There wasn't even a doorbell. If you're looking for Mr. Calvin, you don't have to knock on the door. You can just go in. He'll always wait for you in the attic study. Remembering what Mr. Assakes said, Ms. Selion hesitated for a moment. In the end, she chose to carry the seriously injured man on her back. She bent over and half carried and half dragged him into Scholar Calvin's house. The door wasn't even locked. It opened with a gentle push. "Mr. Calvin, please. Are you there?" Miss Selion felt that she had to greet him, so she shouted a few times in front of the door. However, after a few calls, there was no response. She had no choice but to carry the seriously injured man up to the second floor and walk toward the room with the lights on. However, at that moment, Miss Selion heard a figure screaming in pain. There was also the sound of iron chains being swung. Sister Selion was shocked. She tried to call out again. "Mr. Calvin, are you there? I'm Mr. Assakes' friend. I have something to ask you." "Mr. Calvin?" It was still the sound of screams and the sound of iron chains being swung around. In front of the attic door, Miss Selion couldn't help but push the door open with her trembling hands. She instantly screamed in pain. Inside the room, a white-haired old man was kneeling on the ground. He was only wearing a pair of shorts. He was using the iron chain to whip his own body. Sister Selion even saw a metal belt tightening around the old man's thigh. There were barbs on the band that pierced deep into the old man's thigh. Blood slowly flowed out. Ascetic band. In an instant, Sister Celine recalled the scientific name of the metal band. This is the so-called ancient and traditional cultivation method. However, her screams did not even move the old man. He continued to whip his body with the chain over and over again. The old man's back was filled with wounds, both old and new. Blood dripped from the wounds, making one feel uneasy. After a long time, perhaps it wasn't that long, but as she watched the old man whip himself, every second was torture for Miss Elion. After a while, the old man finally stopped whipping himself. He put down the chain, put his hands together, and faced the window, praying. Miss Selion dared not speak, but she was so nervous that her breathing quickened. The old man finally finished praying. He held his leg and slowly stood up. He then covered himself with a long robe. Did Asek send you here? Why did he send you here? He looked at Miss Selion calmly and asked. Miss Selion opened her mouth and wanted to say something. Who are you carrying? The old man's eyes focused on her. Miss Selion quickly put down the heavily injured man and said, Mr. Calvin, this mister insisted on seeing you. I don't know the details, but he suddenly fainted in front of my house. He has severe burns on his body, and he doesn't want to go to the hospital. It seems like someone wants to capture him. Burns? Old man. Scholar Calvin's eyes focused slightly. He quickly walked over and lifted the clothes on the heavily injured man. He took a quick glance and then looked at Miss Selion. What's your name? Miss Selion, Mr. Miss Selion replied softly. Okay, Miss Selion, please help me carry him to the desk, Scholar Calvin said. Desk? Sister Celine couldn't help but look at the mountainous pile of documents and books on the desk with a troubled expression. However, Scholar Calvin quickly walked to the desk and swept the things on the desk to the ground. It's done now. Carry him here. I need to prepare something. After saying that, this grand scholar of the Freedom City quickly walked out of the room. Judging from his footsteps, he did not look like an old man who had just whipped himself. His leg was still tied with the ascetic belt that pierced through his skin. Miss Selion had no choice but to carry the heavily injured man to the empty desk. After a while, Scholar Calvin came in with 2 clay pots. He stuffed one of the pots into Miss Celian's hands and said, I'll apply it first. Then, you have to apply the ointment again. Don't take more than 5 seconds. Do you understand? Huh? Me? Miss Selion opened her mouth and gulped. She nodded and said, I'll try my best. The 2 jars were filled with a viscous substance that had a faint smell of medicine, but it didn't seem like a regular prescription ointment. Scholar Calvin had already started applying the ointment on the heavily injured man. Miss Selion was in a difficult position, but she had no choice but to follow his instructions. Candles were lit in the study room. There was not even an electric light here. Under the dim light, the 2 of them worked together and spent more than half an hour to finish applying the ointment. Even though she did not know the origin of the ointment, when Sister Celine saw that even though the heavily injured person was unconscious, the pained expression on his face gradually eased up, and she could not help but be amazed by the ointment. Miss Selion, Scholar Calvin called her. Yes, I'm here. Miss Selion replied nervously. Scholar Calvin said, Now, you have 2 choices. The first one is to leave this place and forget what happened tonight. That way, you won't be disturbed in your life. Then what about the second one? You stay. Scholar Calvin said slowly. Ask me what happened, but before you ask, you have to be prepared. Some things are hard to turn back once you know them. You may even be involved in unprecedented danger because of this. I suggest that you choose the first one. The faces of the children in the orphanage flashed across Miss Celian's mind. She took a deep breath and said seriously, I choose the first one. Then please go back. Calvin nodded calmly. Remember, don't tell anyone, including Asakes. Miss Selion nodded silently. She quickly glanced at the heavily injured man, then turned around and walked out of the door. Wait, Miss Selion. Scholar Calvin suddenly called her. Miss Selion turned around. Scholar Calvin frowned, and the way he looked at her changed. I remember now. Miss Selion, you're a reserve holy maiden. You were 5th in the last batch. Is there a problem? Miss Selion asked subconsciously. There's a problem. Scholar Calvin said calmly. Since you're a reserve holy maiden, you don't have the first choice. I'm sorry to tell you, Miss Selion, but I'm afraid you have to stay. Miss Celian's eyes widened. Old man, you can't be so immoral, so angry. Chapter 21-24. She clasped her hands and placed them in front of her chest. She said hesitantly, Why can't I do it just because I'm a holy maiden candidate? She was thinking that if Scholar Calvin forced her to stay, she might be able to defeat him. The self-defense skills that I learned in the Academy of the Freedom City, are they finally going to be put to good use? Because you have the remaining power of the holy ritual in your body, Scholar Calvin said seriously. This power can help me save Robert. Robert? Sister Celine was stunned. She looked at the severely injured person on the table. Him? Robert is my nephew. Calvin said something that shocked the nun. Perhaps it was the guidance of the will of faith that led you to bring Robert to me. Sister, I need the power in your body. Sister Celine shook her head hesitantly. I'm sorry. I don't really understand. Also, there are many candidates for the Holy Maiden. Do you really need me? She did not want to be involved in trouble, but if it was to save someone, she had to do this for the sake of the saint. I don't need you. I just happen to have you here. Scholar Calvin said directly, every girl who participated in the Holy Maiden ceremony and passed the baptism of the holy ritual will have the power of the holy ritual in their body stay for a short period of time. As time passes, it will become weaker and weaker until it disappears. This process usually takes 2 to 3 years. Of course, there are many candidates for the Holy Maiden, but you're right in front of me. Do you understand, sister? Is Mr. Robert's condition very serious? Yes, it's very serious. Scholar Calvin nodded. The ointment that I applied on him can only delay it for a while. I need this little bit of time to find a girl with the remaining power of the holy ritual in her body. Sister, I hope that you're the one I find. Actually, I didn't even have much hope. Robert might not be able to survive until dawn. What do I have to do? Sister Celine took a deep breath, her expression determined. You don't even want to ask about the cause and effect? Calvin asked solemnly. Sister Celine smiled bitterly. Mr. Calvin, didn't you say that I don't have a first choice? But I only participated in saving people. Then I left immediately and continued with my first choice. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can only use it on you. I used self-defense skills that I had never used before. So what should I do? Calvin asked. You're coming over? He took Robert's hand in his. I will help you trigger the remaining power of the holy ritual in your body. Hurry up. He stepped aside. Sister Celine took another deep breath and gritted her teeth. Step forward resolutely. He followed Scholar Calvin's instructions and held Robert's hand with both of his hands. Now, let us begin our usual prayers. Sister Nun nodded and held Robert's hand. Pressing it against his forehead, she said softly, although we don't know each other, I hope you are safe and sound. Poor man. Amen. She slowly closed her eyes. Scholar Calvin looked at Sister Celine in surprise. He suddenly asked, why did you only get 5th place in the previous tournament? Miss Nun said calmly, I'm not God's chosen. My prayers have always been weak. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. Scholar Calvin shook his head. Then he said seriously, let's begin. Okay. The nun closed her eyes again and prayed with all her heart. Calvin was standing behind the nun at this time. A broken blade fell from his hand. Suddenly, it slid down from his sleeve. Scholar Calvin held the broken sword tightly in his hand and murmured something. Then his gaze froze. He stabbed the broken blade into Sister Celine's back. A stab to the back? Sister Celine opened her eyes abruptly. She felt a sharp pain, accompanied by a terrifying sense of being pulled away from her body. Under the effects of the sharp pain and the sense of being pulled away from her body, Sister Celine seemed to see a dazzling world. Her conscious body in the dazzling world seemed to have fallen into a cold lake. She felt her body sinking and being swallowed by the abyss at the bottom of the lake. Sister Celine was instantly engulfed by fear and suffocation. Death. She took a deep breath. Driven by her instincts, she greedily inhaled fresh air for her exhausted body. Sister Celine even started to cough violently. She choked on water. She woke up in a very shallow pool, a pure white world, and an endless pool that was barely above a normal person's knee. Sister Celine crawled up in fear. Outside the pure white world, she couldn't even see anything. However, it seemed like she was not the only one in the pool. Under the swaying water, Sister Celine looked at a person lying in the pool with an inconceivable gaze. Many people, densely packed, lined up neatly, just under her feet, stretching all the way. Sister Celine wanted to scream, but she quickly covered her mouth. This place was so quiet that she could hear the sound of her heartbeat. You did the right thing by holding back. Who is it? Faced with the sudden sound, Sister Celine looked around nervously, but she couldn't see a second person who woke up from the pool. Close your eyes first. Why? If you don't want to face death, do as I say. I'm going to drag you into my room. Quick, they are coming. The voice sounded again in Sister Celine's head. The voice sounded a little anxious. Sister Celine was helpless and could only follow the instructions. She slowly closed her eyes, took a deep breath, pinched her nose, and sank into the pool again. Open your eyes. Sister Celine quickly opened her eyes when she heard the voice, but was stunned by what she saw. At this time, she appeared in a church. How did she suddenly appear in a church? At this moment, she was even pinching her nose. Welcome to the mezzanine of consciousness. This time, the voice sounded as though it had materialized. Sister Celine turned around and saw a boy whose height reached her waist. He had white hair, white brows, and gray pupils. The boy was wearing a loose robe that didn't fit him at all. You are? You can call me. The boy with white brows and gray pupils smiled and said, Madanzo. Madanzo? Sister Celine frowned, trying to search for information about the name. However, the boy smiled and said, You have never heard of my name before. You can only hear my name and my voice here, Sister Celine. You know me? Sister Celine's face was filled with astonishment. I know you. I've witnessed your life, from your birth to your present. The boy named Madanzo nodded slowly. I've witnessed everyone who was born in the Holy Light Kingdom. What is this? Sister Celine clenched her fist and placed it before her chest. She looked around anxiously. The church. The church was consecrating an angel. It was a statue of an angel with 36 wings, and on the feathers of each wing was an eye. An angel statue with countless eyes. I've said it before, this is a mezzanine of consciousness, the boy said slowly. To be exact, this is a transfer point between the petitioner's tower and the destiny system. Why am I here? Sister Celine hesitated. I know about the destiny system, but what is the petitioner's tower? The boy said, Before I answer your questions, are you prepared to know everything? Calvin should have told you about this. If you don't cause any trouble, you only need to stay here. Soon, you will wake up again. Then, you will leave Calvin's home and forget everything that happened tonight. An enormous desire for knowledge was madly attacking the determination in Sister Celine's heart. It was as if it was her instinct. Her instinct was driving her to open her mouth and ask the boy everything he knew. The countless eyes on the 36-winged angel statue seemed to have opened. All of them were looking at her, waiting for her answer. Finally, after coming to a decision, Sister Celine slowly sighed. I am only trying to save someone. The white-haired and white-browed boy was not surprised by her answer. However, he suddenly asked, You don't even know what Calvin and Robert did. Is it a good thing or bad thing? For the sake of saving someone, you don't care if it is good or bad. Perhaps Calvin and Robert are doing something that is not good for the Holy Light Kingdom. As for you, by saving someone, you might become an accomplice. Sister Celine shook her head. Although this is my first time meeting this Mr. Robert, and also my first time coming to Mr. Calvin's home, I can feel that they love life very much. They have a very pure belief in their hearts. They are not bad people. Oh, the boy nodded. Then, he said, Your senses are quite sharp. This is a kind of talent. Otherwise, your consciousness would not be able to reach this place. All right, I know your choice. Sister Celine, before you wake up, just stay here. They will not be able to find this place. They are referring to... The boy smiled casually and said, Of course, it is the Destiny System's willpower guards. They always like to bite me and not let me go. Sister Celine opened her mouth. She subconsciously wanted to ask something. However, the boy winked at her. Sister Celine instantly understood what he meant. Then, she tightly pursed her lips. The boy also revealed a faint smile. Can I pray here? Sister Celine suddenly asked. There is nothing wrong with that, the boy said calmly. However, praying here is actually useless. Of course, you should still be able to comfort yourself. Do you still want to pray here? Sister Celine nodded. The saint of the city of freedom has fallen. The saint will be resurrected on the third day of the calamity. I also want to contribute my strength. Resurrection on the day of calamity, the boy seemed to be muttering. If back then, there was someone who was willing to... What did you say? The boy shook his head. Just stay here. Remember not to look at the eyes of the statue. Remember." After saying that, the strange boy slowly disappeared before Sister Celine's eyes. Sister Celine subconsciously went to look for him. She looked around the church. Her gaze soon moved to the 36-winged angel statue. However, she instantly remembered what the boy had told her to say. She hurriedly closed her eyes and turned around. Her back was facing this strange 36-winged angel statue. The interlayer of consciousness, the petitioner's tower. Destiny's system. Sister Celine suddenly shook her head and muttered to herself, "Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it." However, they were still lingering in her consciousness. Francie Hotel, in the corridor of the floor reserved by Mr. President. The man in sunglasses walked to the door of a room. In front of the door, there was another man standing guard. "Is there anything wrong?" the man in sunglasses asked casually. "This door has never been opened," the guard said casually. "However, the soundproofing of this room is really good. I can't hear anything from inside. I'll go in and take a look," the man in sunglasses said. "It should be about time. Let's see who this guy who sneaked in is. Let's see if he is qualified to be our companion." Hearing that, the guard swiped the key card and opened the door. At the moment when the door was opened, a figure suddenly rushed out. The man in sunglasses reacted quickly. In an instant, he used his knee to hit the figure that rushed out. However, he didn't manage to knock the other party down. The man in sunglasses even had his thigh grabbed tightly. The guy in front of him let out a low roar like a wild beast. He opened his mouth wide and wanted to bite the man in sunglasses. "What's going on?" The man guarding the door immediately shivered and quickly hugged the crazy guy from behind and pulled him away. The man in sunglasses frowned. He looked into the room and saw traces of destruction everywhere. Even the guy who was originally handcuffed to the chair was flipped to the ground at this time. Looking at the crazy guy at this time, the guard quickly said, "I can't hold this guy down. What should I do?" The man in sunglasses frowned and signaled the guard to let go of Asake's. The moment he let go, he quickly kicked Asake's directly into the room. The guard quickly closed the door of the room again. The two stood outside the corridor and saw the confusion on each other's face. Could it be the dosage used is too heavy? The guard asked hesitantly. "The dosage is normal." The man in sunglasses shook his head. The guard thought for a while and said, "That is to say, this guy is not used to the holy water? How unlucky to encounter it with a 1 in a million probability. What should we do now? Robert is still locked up with this guy?" Robert was the same. After the second injection, he actually went crazy as well, as if he had gone mad. "What's going on? Fash, is there a problem with the holy water?" The man in sunglasses. Fash said expressionlessly, "There is no problem with the holy water. If there is a problem, how can you still stand here normally?" "That's true." The guard nodded. "What about now?" Fash said quickly, "I'll go see the president." Chapter 21-25. Looking at the closed door, Mr. Asakes rubbed his stomach and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he stood up slowly with a tense face. He heaved a sigh of relief, and then carefully approached the door of the room. At the same time, his hand grasped the doorknob, and then slowly twisted it. The door that was supposed to be locked could be opened now. At the moment when he rushed over, he took advantage of the chaos and quietly tampered with the door lock. The door was slightly opened, but it was enough for him to see some movement outside the corridor. Only a gatekeeper was standing. This guy was smoking with his back facing the door. Seeing this, Mr. Asakes suddenly opened the door of the room without saying a word. Then, with his hands on the ground, he directly wrapped his legs around the gatekeeper's neck and lifted him directly to the ground. The gatekeeper was shocked, but at this time his neck was tightly wrapped and he couldn't protect his knees. Mr. Asakes even grabbed his arm, making it difficult for him to turn over. After a while, the gatekeeper gradually stopped struggling. Finally, his body softened and he fainted. Gasping for breath, Mr. Arthasheth scrambled to his feet in a sorry state. School of Freedom City taught a lot of self-defense skills, but he hadn't used them for many years. Not only was he rusty, but he also had a big belly. "It seems that I have drunk too much beer recently." Mr. Asakes shook his head and then quickly searched the gatekeeper's body. He really found something. In addition to a dagger made of alloy, there was even a pistol. Mr. Asakes licked his lips and quickly inserted the dagger and pistol into his belt. He looked back at the room. Looking at the guy wrapped in gauze, he quickly said, "Brother, I'm sorry. I have to go first. After all, I'm afraid I can't escape. But don't worry. I will definitely bring someone to save you later." With that, Mr. Asakes dragged the unconscious gatekeeper into the room, locked the door again, and left. But what Mr. Asakes didn't know was that the moment he left, a man with sunglasses slowly walked out from the corner of the corridor. Fash, the head bodyguard who followed President Ballum to Freedom City. Fash didn't even chase after Asakes. Instead, he returned to the room and kicked the gatekeeper who fainted on the ground. The gatekeeper suddenly opened his eyes and got up. He even rubbed his neck. This guy is quite strong. Should I just let him go? I didn't plan to. The head bodyguard was looking for something on the ground. Soon, he found a syringe under the table and carefully looked at it under the light. But it seems that he is a smart guy. It's not worth wasting holy water on him. Of course, I didn't plan to use it on him. So, the holy water is actually... The gatekeeper instantly shut his mouth. He knew very well that Fash would not want Mr. Ballum to hear that a portion of the holy water had not been used. The president has already gone to bed, Fash said indifferently. As long as we give him an answer before he wakes up, it won't be wasted. At this time, Fash's phone rang. He picked up the phone and said indifferently, "Has he left the hotel?" "Very well, I see." With that, Fash looked at the man guarding the door again and ordered, "Clean this place up and keep an eye on Robert. I know what to do." Soon, 2 cars with the logo of the Public Security Department stopped in front of the Francie Hotel. 4 officers from the Public Security Department got out of the car. Someone reported that someone is illegally imprisoning and abusing people here. How is this possible? We are operating legally here. I believe this place is legal. I believe everyone in the city. So I also believe the person who reported it. So I just need to do a simple search. It won't take up much of your time. Then, okay. The manager on duty in the lobby could only agree with the officers from the Public Security Department to search the hotel rooms. They searched all the way and soon came to a floor that was reserved. The head bodyguard, Fash, dealt with the officers from the Public Security Department. Except for the president's room, you can search all the other rooms. We are willing to cooperate with you. Fash said directly, "The president is already asleep. I don't want this to disturb his rest. These 2 days, because of the Holy Fall incident, the president is too tired." "I understand, Mr. Fash." The officers from the Public Security Department didn't dare to put on airs in front of the head bodyguard of the president of the City of Dawn. It was already very difficult for the president to cooperate to this extent. Soon, several investigators from the Public Security Office searched all the rooms, but they found nothing. "It seems that this is really a prank." The officer from the Public Security Department said apologetically, "I heard that the Holy Fall will affect some people's behavior. I didn't expect the rumor to be true. Maybe it's just to vent the uneasiness in his heart." Fash said indifferently, "Since there's no actual damage, I'll leave the follow-up investigation to you." "We know what to do, Mr. Fash, don't worry." The officer nodded and took off his hat. "Also, please send my regards to the president and thank him for his contribution to the City of Freedom. We'll take our leave. I'll see you out." Mr. Asakes hid in the shadows of the alley across from the main entrance of the hotel. When he saw the man in sunglasses escorting the investigators out and chatting with them, Mr. Arthashes wasn't too surprised. The officers from the Public Security Department obviously knew that President Ballum was staying in this hotel. But because of the integrity of the people of the Holy Light Kingdom, they would definitely come. "Brother, it seems that it won't be that easy to save you." Mr. Asakes looked up at a certain spot on the upper floor of the hotel and sighed before sneaking into the alley. After this incident, the phone wouldn't work anymore. There were only 2 people that Mr. Asakes could think of that could help. The city lord of the City of Freedom, Durand, and the indecent principal who had an ill-fated relationship with him. He decided to find the indecent guy. Moreover, He acted as soon as he thought of it. If he delayed any longer, the guy with the sunglasses would at least move the heavily injured brother away. It might even be possible for him to kill him. Bro, can you lend me a phone and make a call? I think I dropped my phone. So careless? But that's right, there are too many people at the carnival tonight. Here, just call me. After easily borrowing the phone from a passerby, Mr. Arthaces hurriedly pressed the button. Then he suddenly froze. Something very real had happened. Other than his own phone number, which was the 666 number of the Public Security Department, Mr. Arthaces could only remember Rose Mansion as phone number. Helplessly, Mr. Arthaces could only dial the number of the residence. But fortunately, someone quickly picked up the call. Hello, Kate or Lily? You're not asleep yet. Let's not talk about this first. Check that indecent phone number. I lost my phone. Hurry up and tell me. I need to find him. Okay, I'll look for it right away. At the same time, in the Rose Mansion, the maid, who had changed into her pajamas but was still sleepy, hurriedly ran out the moment she heard the phone ring. She quickly opened the address book and started to search for the number. Soon, Kay or Lily picked up the phone again. Found it, boss ass sakes. Boss ass sakes? Hello, boss, are you still there? But another man's voice came from the other end of the phone. Where is this place? Kate or Lily subconsciously said, Rose Mansion. Who are you, boss ass sakes? The person on the phone said, This gentleman drank too much and just fainted. Is it Rose Mansion? Okay, I'll send this gentleman back. Kate or Lily wanted to ask more, but the phone was directly hung up. But when she called back, the phone was turned off. Kay or Lily couldn't help but gradually feel uneasy. The passerby who answered the phone had already passed out on the ground. At this time, Mr. Arthaces was pressed to the ground by the two men. He even covered his mouth. The man in sunglasses held the phone in his hand and squatted in front of Arthaces. He chuckled and said, Arthaces, I know your name now. What do you want? The man in sunglasses chuckled and suddenly swung his head, using his forehead to hit Assash's face, causing blood to flow out from Mr. Assash's nose. The man in sunglasses smiled, then stood up and ordered, Go to Rose Mansion. It seems we have something to do. Sister Selin had always felt that it was blasphemous to be in a church with one's back facing the statue. But she couldn't seem to connect that strange angel statue with the holy God. The boy who called himself Medanzo didn't appear again. Sister Selin didn't know how long she had stayed in this church. Along the way, there were several times when she almost couldn't hold herself back and turned around to observe that strange angel statue. She felt as though a demon had entered her heart. She even had a premonition that if she continued to stay here, sooner or later, she wouldn't be able to hold herself back. If I can't look at the statue, then... Silence is a condition that can easily cause one's mind to wander. Sister Selin looked at the door of the church absent-mindedly. I just want to open it a little and see what's going on outside. There shouldn't be any problem, right? After all, Medanzo only told her not to look at the eyes of the angel statue. He didn't say that she couldn't open the door of the church. She hesitated for a moment before the door. In the end, her desire to leave overcame her fear of the unknown. She slowly opened the door of the church a little, and then completely opened it. The church, there was nothing around the church. Because this church was floating, there was no sense of direction. Sister Selin held onto the door of the church in horror. She was completely shocked by what she saw. People, tens of thousands of people. Men, women, old people, children. They wore white clothes and trousers. All of them appeared around the cathedral in a beheading posture. Above, below, to the left, to the right, to the front. Countless people were hung outside the church. Screams. Sister Selin instantly fell to the ground, her face pale. At this moment, these tens of thousands of people, who seemed to be hanging people, opened their eyes one after another. Countless pairs of eyes turned to Sister Selin in that instant. In an instant, Sister Selin seemed to see a huge holy light descending from the sky. The next moment, the holy light destroyed everything, annihilating a prosperous, huge, and lively city. I told you not to look at the eyes. Screams of despair. Sister Selin could no longer hear the mysterious boy's voice and sigh. You're awake. Sister Selin felt the cold floor. She looked at Scholar Calvin in front of her in a daze. She sized up the study room in the attic that wasn't very bright. Am I back? Sister Selin instinctively asked. Where am I? Scholar Calvin frowned and stared into Sister Selin's eyes. Then, where did you go? Sister Selin instinctively avoided Mr. Calvin's gaze. I don't know. It seemed to be a pure white place. I was soaked in water. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to get up, but I couldn't. Then I woke up and saw you. Think carefully. Is there anything else besides the pool? Sister Selin shook her head. Mr. Calvin, what happened just now? It seems that you didn't go there. Scholar Calvin sighed and said calmly, you should have just entered the space of your subconscious. Our subconscious mind is a complex world. Don't worry. This is just a side effect of triggering the power of the holy ritual in your body. It won't cause any harm to your body. I promise. Mr. Robert, has he been healed? Sister Celine asked immediately. She even tilted her head and looked at Mr. Robert on the table. She saw that Mr. Robert's severely burned body had regained normal skin. Sister Selin's eyes widened. The power of the holy ritual in your body is more than I expected. So, the treatment was successful, Mr. Calvin said slowly. Mr. Robert made it through. When will he wake up? It depends on his willpower. Mr. Calvin shook his head. After all, he has been using the holy water. It has deeply eroded his mind. Holy water? Mr. Calvin did not say anything. He just looked at Sister Selin silently. I understand. I won't ask any more. Sister Celine nodded. She hesitated for a moment before saying, Then can I leave now? Anyway, I've already saved him. Go back. Mr. Calvin nodded and said, But before you leave, please take this with you. Looking at the long box Scholar Calvin gave her, Sister Selin asked hesitantly, What is this? When you are in danger, please open it, Scholar Calvin said seriously. This is my reward for saving Mr. Robert. I didn't save him for a reward. Sister Selin shook her head. Then, for the sake of the children you've been taking care of, please reserve some of your power to protect yourself, Calvin suddenly said. How did you, when you were unconscious, you kept shouting some names? Scholar Calvin said casually, I think it might be some children. At least, they are very important to you. Sister Selin looked at the long box and finally accepted it. Rose Mansion, it's here. In front of the mansion, Mr. Assash's hands were handcuffed. At the same time, his mouth was tied with a rolled-up cloth. The man in sunglasses. Mr. Fash looked at the mansion in front of him and was about to open the door. Wait, I think I remember something. One of the men quickly said, Boss Fash, I remember where I heard about this Rose Mansion. Oh, Fash stopped. The subordinate said with a serious expression, Rose Mansion, the hotel opened by the Saint Father of the City of Freedom. It appeared in the City of Freedom Traveler's Guide. The Saint Father's Hotel? Fash frowned and shook his head. Not to mention the Saint Father. Even the Saint of the City of Freedom is already Saint Death. There's nothing to worry about. After that, Fash opened the door and walked in first. The moment the door was opened, Miss Maid, who was sitting quietly by the window, slowly opened her eyes. Her dark blue eyes seemed to have a whirlpool. It really can't stop. Chapter 21-26. Hearing the movement from the door, Kay Forehead Lily put on a coat and hurried out. Boss. However, what was reflected in his eyes was the scene of Mr. Arthashes being escorted in. In addition to a man wearing sunglasses, there were 3 other guys who didn't look kind. What do you want to do? Let go of Mr. Assakes. At this time, the maid seemed to be unexpectedly courageous, but her courage obviously didn't have much effect in front of Fash and the others. Fash just casually waved his hand, and in an instant, a man stepped forward, easily captured Kay Forehead Lily, and pushed her into the lobby of the mansion. In a lobby's lounge, Kay Forehead Lily was caught by the hands and couldn't struggle. As for Mr. Assakes, he was directly put on the ground. Tell me Assakes, right? Fash leaned on the sofa and asked casually, Who ordered you to do this? I said, I went by myself. No one ordered me. Mr. Assakes gritted his teeth. Brother, it's not too late to stop now, really. Fash chuckled. So you still have someone behind you, right? No. Mr. Asakes shook his head. It's just that the saints said, don't go down the evil path. Fash shook his head. It seems that you don't care much about this lady. I hope my companion knows how to be gentle. No, don't come over. K. Forehead Lily screamed in an instant. At this moment, something flew out quickly and hit the back of the head of the man who grabbed K. Forehead Lily. It was a cup. Fash narrowed his eyes in an instant and looked up at the corridor above the lobby. As for the other man, he began to aim with a pistol at this time. He aimed at a young man sitting on the railing of the second-floor corridor. Mr. Bertrand! K. Forehead Lily shouted in surprise and joy. The person sitting on the railing was Bertrand. At this time, he made a silent gesture to K. Forehead Lily, then jumped directly from the railing. It seems that your companion has begun to appear. Fash chuckled. Mr. Asakes, maybe you overestimate your companion's patience. Bertrand glanced at him and suddenly sighed. Asakes is right about one thing. Brother, if you stop now, maybe it's not too late. Fash heard this, first smiled, then shook his head and said, You all like to preach? I'm doing this for your own good. Bertrand sighed again. Really, believe me, I'm a good person. I also hope you can be a good person. Fash opened his mouth, but did not say anything. His men, however, burst into laughter after being stunned for a moment. Of course, we're good people. Ha ha ha. Bertrand was about to speak, but his expression changed slightly, and he even muttered, You're finished. It's quite lively here. A woman's voice came. They subconsciously looked over and saw a beauty with long blonde hair standing at the stairs. She reached out to hold the handrail and slowly walked down with a smile. Finished. The saintess smile. Bertrand opened his mouth, but finally chose to shut up. About an hour ago, he was just passing through the corridor. Because he was thinking about something, he accidentally bumped into the vase in the corridor. Guess what? The saintess directly opened the door of the room and walked out. You're too noisy, Mr. Bertrand. There's an evil spirit. There's definitely an evil spirit behind the saintess. Compared to the so-called saintess, Yulia was even more amazing. She could even be described as a fairy. Mr. Fash stood up subconsciously. After a flash of appreciation, he politely stretched out his hand and made 2 circles in the air. He bowed slightly. I'm sorry to disturb you, madam. It seems that I'm getting closer and closer to what I want to know. What do you want to know? Miss Maid asked indifferently. Fash waved his hand at this time. Mr. Asakes on the ground was lifted up in an instant, and he sat down again. Purpose, that's all. You, Miss Yi. Mr. Asakes opened his mouth at this moment, and his face was full of annoyance. As a descendant of the Dark family, Mr. Asakes is really a pity. Miss Maid sighed and shook her head. Compared to him, your cousin is much better. What could Mr. Asakes say? He didn't dare to look up in front of Miss Yi. As for the cousin Miss Yi mentioned, it naturally referred to Ludic. As the headmaster of the City of Freedom Academy, his achievements were needless to say. In fact, that guy has a lot of bad ideas. Mr. Asakes couldn't help but mutter. Seeing this, the man holding Mr. Asakes coldly snorted. This is not a place for you to chat. Don't talk nonsense here. Miss Maid's eyes moved slightly, but there was a figure's movement at this time, even faster than her eyes. It was as fast as a flash of light. The man holding Mr. Asakes was already spinning. A huge force made his brain almost faint. When he reacted, his head was directly pressed on the floor. The person who made the move was Bertrand. Brother, can't you be a human? Bertrand looked at the face that was about to sink into the floor. If you don't want to be a human, I will help you. In an instant, the other 2 men reacted. One of them let go of K. Air Lily, and the other directly rushed forward. Bertrand's palm was still pressing on the head of the man on the ground. His body was upside down, and his legs rotated, easily kicking the 2 men away. After the 2 men were kicked to the ground, they didn't move anymore. Bertrand stood up again with a force and smiled. Miss, these guys don't need to dirty your hands. Bang dash. The sound of a gunshot instantly disturbed the silence of the night. Bertrand's body shook slightly, and he slowly turned around, frowning. Fash, who was sitting on the sofa, held a pistol on his knee, and said indifferently, "Not bad. You're quite fast, but you shouldn't be faster than a bullet. It's hard to say whether it's fast or not." Bertrand shook his head, "But I almost forgot that humans have already mastered this kind of weapon. I was really shocked when it suddenly exploded." Fash frowned reflexively. What did he see? Bullet. The bullet at this time slipped out of Bertrand's body little by little and finally fell on the floor. Bang, 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 dash. He instinctively pulled the trigger again, and bullets crazily spat out from the gun. But at this moment, there was an invisible wall in front of Bertrand, blocking all the bullets outside his body. Looking at the floating bullets, Fash's pupils began to dilate under the sunglasses. He was still sitting on the sofa, not because he didn't want to stand up, but because he felt his body was stiff at this time. "You? What the hell are you?" Bertrand ignored Fash's words at this time, and just looked at Mississippi Maid expressionlessly. "Miss Yu, can you leave this guy to me? It seems that I haven't killed much since I ascended to heaven." Mississippi Maid said indifferently, "Mr. Bertrand, do you want to kill very much?" Bertrand felt as if his soul was frozen in an instant. He suddenly shuddered, and his murderous eyes gradually calmed down. He smiled embarrassedly. "Of course not. I'm just kidding. I stopped killing for a long time. I'm sorry." Just at this moment, Fash moved. He directly jumped up, stepped over the sofa chair, and rushed madly toward the door. Mississippi Maid looked over in an instant, and her eyes lit up slightly. In an instant, Fash only felt that the door was getting farther and farther away from him. No matter how hard he tried, everything in front of him was getting away from his sight at a faster speed. He subconsciously looked around, only to find that the surroundings had become a long bridge with bottomless abyss on both sides. Behind him, there was a terrible monster madly chasing after him. All Fash could do was to run forward recklessly, hoping to cross the endless bridge. His initial nervousness had turned to fear, and in the end, it was as if he was about to break down, but he still ran forward, stumbling and stumbling. There was no end to it. What is he doing? At this moment, Chris had already removed the restraints on Mr. Arthashis' body. Mr. Arthashis looked at the guy in sunglasses who had just jumped over the sofa and was trying to escape. This guy stood still, but for some reason, he began to sweat. His forehead was full of sweat. "Don't ask things you don't understand," Bertrand said suddenly. Mr. Asakes opened his mouth. "No, shouldn't he ask things he doesn't understand?" "Mr. Asakes." At this moment, Mississippi Maid suddenly shouted, I'm here." Hearing this, Asakes froze and quickly responded. Mississippi Maid said indifferently, "As a resident of this mansion, I am very dissatisfied with the security work of your mansion. It seems that this mansion should have closed down next year in the hands of Mr. Asakes. Don't use the future perfect tense. I'll try my best to respond to your expectations." Mr. Asakes could only ask tentatively. Miss Maid heaved a sigh of relief, but she turned over and went upstairs without saying anything. Mr. Asakes and Kay Forehead Lily looked at each other. They wanted to speak, but they didn't dare to say a word. Miss Yuye's aura was too strong. Until Miss Yuye's figure disappeared in the corridor, Mr. Asakes breathed a sigh of relief, sat down, touched his forehead, and looked at Bertrand innocently. Then, "Mr. Bertrand, what should we do now?" "Wait." Bertrand shrugged. "According to Miss Yuye's, well, with her temperament, this guy in sunglasses will be punished to stand at least until morning. Maybe when the young master wakes up, I hope he won't break down." Kay Forehead Lily couldn't help but blink and asked curiously, "Mr. Bertrand, you seem to know Miss Yuye very well. Didn't you meet each other in Donremy Village? Don't ask things you don't understand." Bertrand smiled faintly as he waved his hand and said, "Now, who's going to help me tie these guys up? I'll do it." Mr. Asakes rolled up his sleeves and stood up without saying anything. "I'd love to do it. Boss, have some hot tea." At this moment, Christy brought over a cup of brewed black tea, a small plate of sugar, and some milk. She went over to Mr. Arthashis' side. In the rest area, except for the man in sunglasses who stood motionless, the other 3 men had been tied up and piled on the ground casually. As for Bertrand, he was fiddling with the things he found from these people, especially the guns. Mr. Asakes hid behind the counter in the lobby and peeped silently. He was actually still in shock and was now recovering from the shock. "Oh, okay." Mr. Asakes nodded subconsciously and immediately said, "By the way, what time is it now?" 3 in the morning. "Well, it's almost 4. It's already this late." Mr. Asakes shook his head. He thought for a while, picked up the phone, and opened the address book. He called for a long time, but no one seemed to answer. He frowned and immediately made another call. Still, no one answered. Mr. Asakes couldn't help shaking his head, but seeing K. Forehead Lily's hesitant look, he asked, "Do you have something to say?" "Boss, actually." K. Forehead Lily opened her mouth and immediately shook her head. "Boss, these people, obviously I'm involved in trouble." Mr. Asakes smiled bitterly. "I don't know why, but since the curse happened in the mansion, I've been feeling very unlucky." K. Forehead Lily suddenly smiled and said, "It must be because you always pretend to be a saint, so you were punished by God." Mr. Asakes then knocked on the little maid's head. "Don't talk nonsense." K. Forehead Lily stuck out her tongue. Tomorrow, she would tell the principal to reject the invitation. She didn't want to cause trouble for Mr. Asakes at this time. But there was one thing she still had to tell him. "Boss, K. Forehead Lily took a deep breath and then whispered, "I think I can pray that my destiny system can be opened." "What?" Mr. Asakes couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Really? Look, K. Forehead Lily made an opening gesture with her hands. Mr. Asakes shook his head and said, "You know, I can't see anything, but your destiny system can be restored, which is a good thing. Wait for me here." With that, Mr. Arthas turned around and went upstairs. K. Forehead Lily could only obediently nod. After returning to the room, Mr. Asakes first leaned against the door and slowly sighed. Soon, he walked to the window and knelt down at the position specially set for praying. He closed his eyes and prayed for a while, then slowly unbuckled his belt and took off his pants. On his thigh, there were dozens of bandages. The bandages were stained with blood. Mr. Asakes untied the bandages expressionlessly. Under the bandage, there was a metal bandage with barbs wrapped around his thigh. Mr. Asakes grabbed the bandage with both hands. Gritting his teeth, he actually tightened the bandage even more. His eyebrows instantly wrinkled, as if he was enduring great pain. Panting, after half a minute of panting, Mr. Asakes' face gradually calmed down. He wrapped the bandages on his thigh again and then put on his clothes. When he went out, Mr. Asakes had a notebook in his hand. He had pried open the floor under the bed and took the notes out from under it. It should have belonged to K. Forehead Lily. Chapter 21-27. Lily waited for Mr. Asakes to come back, but she was pulled out of the door by him. They went to the rose courtyard of the mansion and sat down on the wooden stool. With the help of some light from the room, Lily found that Mr. Asakes looked a little dignified at this moment. "Oh, boss, do you have something to say to me?" Lily, do you still remember the scene when we first met?" Lily was startled when she heard this. Then she nodded gently and whispered, "I remember. I will remember it for the rest of my life." She added silently in her heart. Arthas patted Kelly's head and chuckled. "At that time, you were only as tall as my waist. You were so skinny that you looked like a withered twig. You fell on the snow at that time. I don't know how long you were unconscious. We all thought that you couldn't be saved." Lily whispered, "Boss, you saved me. You hugged me for the whole night and used your body to warm me up. Later, you even got frostbite." Mr. Asakes smiled casually and suddenly asked, Lily, can you remember the past now?" Lily shook her head. There was a secret. That was, her memory only started from the time when Mr. Asakes came back. She had no idea why she was unconscious in the snow and why she was wandering in the no man's land. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Although she didn't have that part of her childhood, Lily didn't feel that it was a pity, because that childhood might be an extremely painful memory. "Here's a notebook. I found it when I met you." Mr. Asakes took out the notebook and handed it to Lily. "It may help you remember something." Lily's lips couldn't help but turn pale. She grabbed the notebook with both hands, but didn't move. Why, suddenly, not all of a sudden, Mr. Assake's shook his head. Actually, when I found you, you weren't alone. There was also a woman. There's another one? Then, that woman? Mr. Assake's shook his head. I'm sorry. When we found her, she's dying. She hugged you tightly with her body. I bought you more time. She is. Kalili subconsciously tightened her grip on the Arthashi's boss arm. I don't know. She didn't say. Mr. Assake sighed. She has bright red hair. I heard from my mentor, Calvin. Did they come from a race called the Celts? However, it was extremely rare. As for you, you didn't remember anything after you woke up, so we didn't tell you anything about this woman. But look, your hair isn't red either. It's probably because they aren't related by blood. Of course, this is just our guess. Forehead Lily's expression became complicated. Mr. Assake said, before that woman died, she entrusted the notebook to me. She made it very clear that you can't pray. But if one day you can pray, this notebook will be given to you. Now that your destiny system has been unlocked, I can finally keep my promise. Inside, there are clues about my origin. Forehead Lily looked at the notebook in her hand, lost in thought. Maybe? Perhaps not. Mr. Arthashes shook his head and said, have we studied this notebook before? Unfortunately, we can't open it. Of course, in order not to destroy the notebook itself, we didn't dare to use too rough methods. Maybe you can give it a try. Forehead Lily slowly opened the notebook. Sure enough, it's opened. Mr. Sash's eyes lit up. It's really amazing. In the past 10 years, I've occasionally tried some methods that I could think of, but they were all fruitless. Do you see anything? Boss Assakes. Forehead Lily lifted the notebook, opened it, and said subconsciously, it's blank. Blank? Mr. Assakes couldn't help but frown. Since the notebook was opened, he took it from Forehead Lily's hand and flipped it back and forth several times. The notebook was indeed blank. This was indeed given to us by that woman when we found you. Mr. Assakes shook his head. My mentor Calvin and Ludic can testify about this matter, because they were also at the scene. Didn't you see them with me when you woke up? As for why it's blank, I'm afraid you can only solve this mystery by yourself. I believe you, boss. Forehead Lily nodded. When they were young, Mr. Assakes, Principal Ludic, and Grand Scholar Calvin once traveled together in the 7 capitals. They even explored many unfamiliar areas outside of the 7 capitals. At that time, in order to make it easier for them to travel, these 3 gentlemen even formed a band called Firebomber. Mr. Assakes even changed his stage name to Hot Air Arthas. Later on, because she had to bring him along, it became inconvenient for him to travel. In the end, this trip ended. After returning to the Freedom City, Kalili moved into the Rose Mansion as a maid. Until now. By the way, Boss Assakes, that woman, what happened to you? We buried her under a cedar tree near where you were found. Mr. Assakes thought for a while and said, although so many years have passed, I think I can still find the approximate location. If there's a chance, maybe I can take you there. Now you should go and rest. After so many things happened tonight, I think you need a quiet environment. Kalili shook her head. It's going to be dawn soon. I should go and prepare breakfast for the guests. Otherwise, I'm afraid that Miss Yi will complain again. Her eyes are really scary. She's so beautiful. Mr. Assakes couldn't help but nod in agreement. Indeed, Mr. President, I really don't know. Let me go. President Ballum woke up early and was enjoying the breakfast prepared by the hotel. In front of him, the guard fell to the ground, twitching. Next to him, the other 2 bodyguards were holding rubber sticks in their hands. These were the murder weapons. President Ballum threw away the knife and fork in his hand and wiped his lips with a handkerchief. Then he said indifferently, you see, I've finished my breakfast, but you haven't given me any useful information. I hate inefficient things the most. The seriously injured guard on the ground didn't dare to look at the president's eyes. He just repeated, I really don't know where Mr. Fash went. Okay, since you really don't know, I won't make it difficult for you. The president waved his hand and said, come, let's give the rats in the Freedom City more food. Seeing the 2 bodyguards directly lift him up, The man guarding the door said in horror, "I'll talk." I said, "Mr. President, don't feed me to the rats. I'll tell you everything." So, Fash didn't come back after leading people to follow the intruder. The president leaned back on the chair. "Also, I lost a holy water, right?" "Yes. Yes." The guard trembled. I only know this much. "President, please let me go. Don't I treat you well?" President Ballum asked coldly. The guard squeezed out a voice from his throat. "Good. Very good. If you want the holy water, you can ask me directly. Why did you steal it?" The president shook his head. "Do you think I won't give it to you if you ask me? I'm really disappointed in you." I'm sorry." President Ballum sighed and waved his hand. Instantly, the bodyguards turned around. Not long after bodyguards turned around, they heard the guards' blood-curdling screams. They still didn't plan to turn around, but they could imagine the situation of the guard just from the sound. President, don't you want the holy water? I'll give it to you. A lot of holy water." No, I don't want it. At this moment, Ballum's president grabbed the back of the guard's head and lifted his head. Then he bent down and opened his mouth abruptly. In an instant, a pool of grayish-black liquid gushed out from President Ballum's mouth like tap water. The liquid not only poured into the gatekeeper's mouth, it even submerged his face and then continued to slide down his entire body. And within this liquid, there were actually strands of long, thread-like gray worms that were as thick as wool. After a long time, President Ballum stood up again. He adjusted the bow tie on his neck and combed his messy hair. Then, he said indifferently, "Go give the rats more food." Only then did the bodyguards slowly turn around. They looked at the gatekeeper who was in a pool of liquid. Those thread-like gray bugs even crawled all over the gatekeeper's body. As for the gatekeeper, right now, his face revealed a strange smile. Several bodyguards secretly gasped, but silently began to deal with the gatekeeper who had already become a corpse. Those strands of gray worms quickly disappeared as if they were vaporized. "Mr. President, then, how should we deal with Robert?" A bodyguard braced himself and asked. President Ballum opened a can of happy water and drank it. "Robert?" "Yes, after he was caught. Mr. Fash gave him the holy water. But after injecting the holy water again, Robert became manic and out of control. He still hasn't shown any signs of improvement." President Ballum shook his head. "That's because you didn't give him double the happiness. Since he lost control, give him another injection. I'm going out to have a meeting with the administrators of the 7 capitals. Robert can't come before I come back. Send him to feed the rats." "Will we know what to do?" The bodyguard nodded. "Then what about Mr. Fash?" "At most 2 days. If he doesn't come back, he won't come back." President Ballum said indifferently, "Someone will deal with it. Prepare the car." Boss Luo always had the habit of going to bed early and getting up early, and this habit had been maintained until now. As for whether something irreparable would happen when he was asleep, if something irreversible happened, then it was useless even if he was awake. On the other hand, if it was something that could be salvaged, after he woke up, it could be salvaged. Or even, these things might not happen at all. "Mr. Assakes brought them here?" "Yes, I didn't want to disturb you, so I asked them to be quiet." Miss Maid tidied up Boss Luo's clothes and said casually, "It's very quiet in the latter half of the night. I'm not that easily woken up." Boss Luo smiled casually. "I'm a sleepy person." Boss Luo didn't know if he had a morning temper. Miss Maid didn't mention it, but Rin Xiling mentioned it to him before. He actually had a morning temper. "Master, do you want to meet those people now?" Miss Maid asked softly. Boss Luo opened the curtains and looked at the Freedom City outside. He suddenly smiled and said, "The sunshine today is very good." Miss Maid couldn't help blinking. Boss Luo smiled and turned around. He pointed at his lips with his finger. "Don't you want to add a touch of color to this bright sunshine?" Miss Maid smiled sweetly and walked up slowly. "Good morning, Mr. Assakes." The voice came from upstairs. Boss Assakes, who was dozing in front of the lobby counter, was suddenly awakened. His head hit the edge of the table. Pain. Of course it was very painful. He immediately let out a strange cry. "Mr. Assakes is also very energetic today. I was scared by you." How can I not be energetic? Boss Assakes rubbed his head and smiled bitterly. You finally woke up? Kate or Lily has prepared breakfast. I'll get it for you. It wasn't that Boss Assakes didn't want to say more. It was mainly because Miss Maid was looking at him at this moment, which made him feel scared. Seeing Boss Assakes run out in a hurry, Bertrand also quickly stood up and said subconsciously, well, Mr. Luo, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Bertrand. Mr. Luo, Bertrand quickly said with a serious face. Mr. Luo, I've been watching these people all night. They're all here. But since these guys came, there seems to be an extra pair of eyes outside the mansion. I didn't want to disturb you, so I didn't turn it off. Anyway, that guy doesn't seem to want to come in for the time being. Mr. Bertrand is very reliable. Boss Luo smiled slightly. Bertrand smiled awkwardly. He wanted to say something, but then he didn't say anything. The main reason was that the saint was looking at him at this moment, which made him feel scared. Boss Luo didn't care too much about the guys on the ground. He just glanced at Fash, who had been standing there all night. After this glance, Fash's body suddenly trembled, and then he collapsed on the ground like an exhausted person. His eye sockets even had shadows in them at this moment, as if they were sunken. Saint ability user. Fash, who was paralyzed on the ground, was full of fear at this time. You are Saint ability users. Saint ability users? Boss Luo blinked and smiled. It's a good thing to be able to generalize with your own knowledge. In fact, you could be anything. Your name is Fash, right? He was even more frightened. His body even trembled a little, but his face was not pale. Instead, it became redder, as if it was burning red. At this moment, hot smoke began to escape from Fash's body. Fash seemed to be suffering great pain. His eyes swept around frantically, then stared at the coffee table. On the coffee table, there were all the things that Bertrand found. Fash rushed over in an instant, but instead of getting the weapons on the coffee table, he eagerly opened a metal box. There was a syringe inside. Without thinking, Fash directly injected his arm with the syringe. Mr. Luo? Bertrand frowned at this time, but Boss Luo just shook his head gently and let Fash complete the injection. At this time, Fash, who had completed the injection, knelt on the ground at once, but the painful expression on his face gradually faded. Instead, he showed a strange and satisfied smile. After a while, Fash slowly exhaled and stood up again. The effect of the holy water is the best after the injection. At this time, I will be particularly clear-headed. So what do you want to ask me? Anything is fine. I just ask that I don't experience that kind of endless running environment again. Bertrand's heart, at this time, am particularly clear-headed. Are you sure you don't become particularly afraid of death? Boss Luo smiled casually at this time and said, Mr. Fash, what do you think we should ask? Fash couldn't help but frown. He thought for a while and said, Are not here for the Grand President's secret? Boss Luo said, then asked, What secret will the Grand President have? This? Fash. Fash felt that the holy water might not have taken effect yet. He doesn't seem to be clear-headed yet. Seeing this, Bertrand couldn't help but open his mouth. This future son-in-law and the Saintess are inexplicably compatible. No wonder they can walk together. Chapter 21-28. Please have some tea. Kay or Lily was serving tea to everyone in the hall, perfectly fulfilling her duties as a maid of Rose Mansion. Of course, Fash was not part of this. Mr. Fash, who almost smashed Mr. Assash's nose with his head last night, was unusually silent at this time. He knew that there was no possibility for him to escape. Escape? As long as he had this thought now, his body's instinct would directly resist him, making him want to vomit. In that endless world of running, Fash had vomited countless times. But if he didn't want to die, he could only continue to run. That was an experience that even his rationality would want to seal away. But in fact, everyone's eyes were more on Boss Luo at this time. This mansion was Assash's property, but unknowingly, Boss Luo was more like the owner here. He had the strange power to become the center of attention and the center of everything. Bertrand was silent. He had to admit this because he himself had unknowingly become one of the affected ones. Bertrand suddenly had a strange feeling at this time. If the future son-in-law was compared to the sun, then everything in the world would follow a fixed law and revolve around this sun. We are probably born to serve this sun, right? This was a very strange feeling. It even disappeared in a flash, leaving only a trace of a strange feeling of indifference. Bertrand shook his head subconsciously to get rid of this strange feeling for the time being. He then coughed softly and looked at Fash, who seemed to be waiting for a verdict, and said, "There is a guy outside the house who has been staring at this place since last night. Don't you want to invite this guy in to have a seat?" Outside the house. Fash was startled when he heard this, and immediately frowned. "I only brought these people, and they have been caught by you. Who else can there be? Not your people?" Bertrand showed a puzzled look. "You really don't know? I have no reason not to cooperate." Fash shook his head and said, "Since you said that someone has been keeping an eye on this place with your ability, you could have just brought him in. Whether he is one of my men or not, we will know after confrontation." Without saying a word, Bertrand turned to the door and said indifferently, "Son-in-law, you guys talk first. I'll be back soon." It was a very swift and decisive way of doing things. Seeing this, Boss Luo moved closer to Miss Maid and said casually, "This Mr. Bertrand is very decisive. It's one of the few advantages." Miss Maid looked as usual. Boss Luo chuckled, then looked at Fash and said, "Mr. Fash, please take a seat. Just treat this as a tea party. You just said that some of the Grand President's secrets are starting to interest me." For a moment, the words crashed into Fash's ears. It seemed to be translated into this: "Suspect of a crime? Please make your statement." Fash nodded and pulled out a chair. He slowly sat down. He put his hands on the table and said, "About my previous actions? You guys saw it too." "I didn't see it. What did you do?" Asakes suddenly raised his hand and said, "Do it again if you have the ability." Fash didn't even look at Mr. Asakes. He continued, "We call it burning degree. Once burning degree exceeds the limit, the body will spontaneously combust. Burning degree can only be reduced by injecting holy water. As for holy water, it is something that President Balaam can use to control us." "You knew it was poison, but you still injected it?" Mr. Asakes sneered and said, "You said it was a blackmail and I don't believe it, but if you said you were willing to do it for something, I will believe it." Fash looked at Asakes coldly. He knew that this guy was narrow-minded because of what happened last night, so he spoke in a strange tone. "That's right. Back then, the injection of the holy water was voluntary. I don't deny this," Fash said indifferently. "For me, this is a life-changing event. Why wouldn't I accept it?" Mr. Asakes shook his head and said, "Whether it is in the capital of freedom or the capital of dawn, even the other 7 capitals, there is no better way to change one's life than to become a devout prayer. What kind of effort is this? Brother, you're going down the wrong path, aren't you? For you guys, is that really the case? But for us," Fash said expressionlessly, "for us who can't pray, not only can we not generate koja, but also have been defined as sinners since our ancestors, and the blood of blasphemers flows in our veins. Prayer, is it useful? You can't pray." Mr. Arthashes stood up abruptly, but quickly sat back down. "I can pray," Fash said indifferently. "Since I used holy water, I can already pray." Mr. Arthashes widened his eyes in disbelief. He knew what the sinner's bloodline was. It was the bloodline of those who had blasphemed against the saints and were exiled to a desolate land outside of the 7 capitals after being judged. When he, Minter Calvin, and Ludic traveled together as an orchestra, they had come into contact with the descendants of sinners. The environment in those places was as bad as purgatory, and the descendants of sinners seemed to be suffering. But holy water could make the descendants of sinners pray again. Subconsciously, Mr. Asakes looked at Kay Air Lily. The little maid of the mansion seemed to have thought of something at this moment. She gripped her skirt tightly and even bit her lips. Such a thing can't exist. Mr. Asakes shook his head. This is a challenge to the supreme of the 7 capitals, and even the faith of the entire Holy Light Kingdom. This is heresy. It's up to you to believe it or not, Fash said indifferently. At this moment, Boss Luo suddenly asked, "Can you tell me the origin of this holy water? Since it's a method that Mr. President used to recruit you, it means that the holy water was made by Mr. President? Mr. President is the only living source of holy water." Fash thought for a moment and said, "Only he completed the transformation into a receiver of holy water. The president, that Balaam, that bastard, was able to rise from a nobody to the president of the city of Dawn in such a short period of time. You'll never know how many officials in the city of Dawn are people of the holy water system. Even I don't know. The source of holy water and the receiver?" Miss Maid thought for a moment and said, "In other words, this president is also a descendant of sinners." "Should be." Fash nodded. "But I'm not sure. I only heard Balaam talk about some things about the land of sin. But in theory, only those with sinners' bloodlines who were exiled there and their descendants would know about the land of sin. The people of the 7 capitals wouldn't step into a terrifying place like the land of sin. What is the transformation of holy water, S receiver?" Miss Maid said indifferently, "It sounds like a kind of research." "I don't know." Fash shook his head and said, "I only know these terms. Balaam said it by accident. It's even possible that it's just to mislead me. Balaam will be wary of us, even when we're under the control of holy water. He never really believed in anyone." "I need a sample of holy water," Miss Maid said directly. Fash said helplessly, "I don't have any more. The one I used just now was embezzled from this guy. You made me fall into that terrifying spiritual world and greatly increased my burning value. Otherwise, I could at least last until tomorrow. Don't they have it on them?" Essex pointed at the guys on the ground. "They're the same as me." Fash shook his head. "Balaam will give us holy water regularly, 1 dose each time, never more. Once something happens to the president, Mr. Fash, you won't be able to obtain holy water, so you can only protect him carefully." Boss Luo nodded. "It's like something a suspicious person would do. But telling us these things is equivalent to betraying the president. Aren't you afraid, Mr. Fash?" Fash said, "Holy water not only allows sinners like us to regain the ability to pray, but it can also make our minds more active and our physical strength better. It's an all-round improvement. Because of this, I can grasp the current situation very well. Balaam is doing something very crazy. I hope to see someone who can stop him." "What does he want to do?" Essex asked in a deep voice. "Holy water is a very special substance," Fash said in a deep voice. "The saint of the city of freedom will be resurrected on the 3rd day after the calamity. If the resurrected holy maiden herself was a user of the holy water, then the resurrected saint might also, maybe what? Just like us. He's an evil blasphemer. How dare he? It's not a matter of whether he dares or not, but he's already doing it." Fash shook his head. "At the very least, I know that all the candidates in the Holy Maiden ceremony have unknowingly used the holy water. No, I have to expose his evil deeds." "How are you going to do that?" Fash sneered. "Now that the supreme beings are preparing for the resurrection ceremony, they won't care about what's going on below. You can't get them to respond to you. Currently, the city of freedom is under the charge of the managers of the 7 capitals. I'm afraid that the other managers of the 7 capitals have already encountered problems." "What did you say?" "According to the schedule, Balaam should be having a meeting with the managers of the 7 capitals right now," Fash said with a shrug. "I'm really sorry, everyone. I was too busy last night, and I almost couldn't get up in the morning. We've just arrived, President Balaam. You're too polite. Please take a seat," the mayor of Duran City said with a smile. In the meeting room of the City of Freedom City Hall, other than him, the managers of the 7 capitals were also present. Today was the last meeting for the resurrection ceremony that was about to begin. This meeting will be presided over by Lord Archangel Langdo. After everyone was seated, the mayor of Duran City made a grand introduction. He looked at the young man, sitting at the head of the table, with an extremely respectful expression. High Archangel Langdo was probably the most respected person in the Holy Light Nation other than the Supreme Beings. However, This high archangel seemed to be a little absent-minded this morning. However, ever since the president of Balaam entered the office, High Archangel Langdo seemed to have regained his focus. Langdo, come and sit beside me. The managers of the 7 capitals looked at each other in surprise. It seemed that the president of the city of Dawn was very favored by the holy light. However, it made sense since the city of Dawn had always provided the most amount of willpower. The managers of the 7 capitals sat down with different thoughts in their minds. At this moment, Langdo looked at the president of Balaam, who was sitting beside him, and said, "Balaam, did you bring those candies? My mouth is a little bland." Everyone was stunned. As a high archangel, he liked to eat candies? "I'm really sorry, Lord Langdo," the president of Balaam said apologetically. "I left in a hurry to attend the ceremony in the City of Freedom, so I didn't bring them with me." "You didn't?" Langdo frowned impatiently. The president of Balaam then said, "But I brought some juice. It tastes the same. If Lord Langdo doesn't mind, I can ask my subordinates to bring some over." "Hurry up and bring it over. I miss that taste," Langdo said. The president of Balaam turned around and looked at his subordinates. Soon his subordinates brought in an exquisitely packaged bottle and some cups and distributed the juice to everyone. This is a very rare specialty of the City of Dawn. There isn't a lot of it produced each year. Since I've brought it here, I'll give it to everyone, the president of Balaam said with a smile. "What time is it? Who has the mood to care about this?" A female manager of the 7 capitals frowned and pushed the cup away. "Balaam, this is the City of Freedom, not your city of entertainment." "Delicious. It's really delicious." The High Archangel finished the juice in one gulp. The High Archangel even felt that it wasn't enough. He snatched the bottle from his subordinate's hand and started gulping down the juice. "Why are you looking at me?" Langdo wiped his lips and said energetically, "You should try it too. I believe you will fall in love with this taste." It was indescribably strange, but this was the High Archangel. After all, the city of blazing sky and this High Archangel were of the same origin. The Pope could only express his gratitude. "Well, since High Archangel said so." The Pope of the city of blazing sky hesitated for a moment before picking up the cup and taking a sip. "How is it? Does it taste good?" Langdo looked at the Pope and asked with a smile. "Indeed, it's a little novel." The Pope nodded. He drank the juice as if he didn't drink it at all. He couldn't taste anything at all. The female manager of the 7 capitals picked up the cup and gulped down half of the juice. Then she said, "I've drunk the juice. High Archangel Langdo, can we start today's meeting? We don't have much time." "Then let's start." Langdo nodded like a spring breeze. Chapter 21-29. You mean to say that the managers of the 7 capitals will soon become slaves that rely on the holy water? Mr. Achey's expression became agitated. Even though the Holy Light Kingdom's universal concept was to teach people to be kind, it didn't mean that the people of the Holy Light Kingdom didn't know the consequences of doing bad things. Once the managers of the 7 capitals were affected by the holy water, they would refuse to obey and self-combust due to the high degree of burning. The 7 capitals would fall into chaos. In other words, the administrators of the 7 capitals had no choice but to obey President Balaam, who controlled the source of the holy water. If Balaam succeeded in his plan to revive the saint, he would have the ability to overturn the entire holy light world. In fact, according to the time, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as it seems. Fash said calmly, "At least, in my opinion, Balaam has no reason to fail." Mr. Asakes sat down helplessly. If it hadn't happened, he might have been able to struggle. But since it had happened, he had no way to do anything. Rushing to the city hall now? The entire Freedom City's city hall would probably become President Balaam's backyard. The sage? Why would the sage die at this time? Mr. Asakes smiled bitterly. If the sage was still around, there wouldn't be so many problems. Not necessarily, Miss Maid suddenly said. Their gazes converged on her at this moment. Miss Maid said calmly, "Since the appearance of the holy water isn't something that happened in a day or two, the Supremes of the Holy Light Kingdom haven't discovered it yet. This is a problem in itself." "Yu Yi," Miss Maid, are you saying that the holy water can fool the Supremes? Mr. Asakes asked subconsciously. At least, there's a way to avoid it. Miss Maid thought for a while and looked at Fash, asking directly, how did Balaam avoid the background check of the Destiny system? Fash was surprised. He opened his mouth. After a moment of silence, he frowned and said, you actually know about the background. It seems that you aren't just an ordinary sacred ability user. That's right, Balaam does have the ability to. His voice stopped abruptly. At this moment, Fash suddenly grabbed his neck with both hands. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was slightly open as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. What are you doing? Mr. Asakes was shocked. He went forward without thinking and tried to pry Fash's hands away. But in the end, he was still a step too late. Fash suddenly exerted force with both hands and broke his own neck. All of this happened in the span of a breath. At this time, Arthesis had just stood up. He's dead. Mr. Asakes turned his head and looked at Boss Luo and Miss Mates. Miss Mates? Just now, why did he suddenly crack? Crack, crack. At the same time, the sound of bones shifting could be heard. It was Fash's men who were tied to the ground. When would they wake up? And in the same way, he ended his own life. It seems, S. Balaam. S. defense is Balaam's S. It triggered the defense mechanism, Miss Maid said suddenly. Boss Luo said, before he killed himself, Mr. Fash was talking about the background of the Destiny system. Miss Maid nodded and immediately walked to the ground. His neck was twisted, and his eyeballs were even protruding out. Miss Maid directly went through Fash's chest. She grabbed a shimmering book. It was the log in Fash's Destiny system. However, the moment the heavenly will was taken out, it started to burn. Miss Maid's eyes narrowed slightly, and her palm covered the log directly. But the log didn't burn out immediately. Its burning only began to slow down until the fire on the log was completely extinguished. This log from Fash's Destiny? There was not much left. Oh, you have made so many changes to the Destiny system. Miss Maid said as if talking to herself. There are so many that I can't recognize them. Mr. Asakes didn't know what Miss Yi was doing at this moment. In his line of sight, Miss Yi suddenly walked towards Fashcon. She squatted down. She seemed to have taken something, but she didn't take anything in her hand. Then it was that terrifying look in his eyes. Mr. Asakes even shuddered instinctively. He wanted to say something, but Miss Maid had returned to Boss Luo's side. Only some wreckage is left. I don't know how many things are left. Miss Maid said to Boss Luo with a hint of apology. This was probably one of the few moments where she would fail. Therefore, Miss Maid looked a little unnatural. She was too demanding of herself. Boss Luo knew. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, taking back Mr. Fash's last words, can we assume that His Excellency Balaam's president has partial authority to control the Destiny system? If the suicides of Fash and the others were orders from Destiny behind the scenes, then that is indeed the case. Miss Maid muttered, and only the Supreme of the Holy Light Kingdom and the developer of the Destiny system can give this authority. There should be no other possibility. But I've been away for too long. Miss Maid shook her head. These guys, although they didn't make much progress, they wouldn't stay in the same place forever. The Destiny system has been evolving all this time. Perhaps some mechanism has been born. Master, I need some time to analyze this remnant log. Don't you need me to do it? Boss Luo smiled casually. Miss Maid's eyes lit up. I will try my best to catch up with your time. Boss Luo closed his eyes and opened them again, saying, my time is 2 days. Miss Maid nodded. Normally, I should need 2 days. But in this case, 1 day and a half. No, 1 day is enough. Then I'll wait for your good news. Boss Luo nodded. Miss Maid excused herself and went upstairs. Her actions were fast, even more serious than when she beat up Kelowna and Shinryu. Ahem. Mr. Asakes coughed lightly and looked at Boss Luo. You seem to be talking about something very powerful just now. And then, you don't intend to explain it to me, right? Boss Luo said casually, does the City Hall of Freedom City have the business of recovering corpses? Mr. Arthas smiled bitterly and said, Yes, there must be. Not only that, but there's also the business of detaining people. Mr. Bertrand's son-in-law, Mr. Luo, are you interested in visiting the detention room under the city hall? Boss Luo smiled and suddenly said, I need to prepare for the selection of the Holy Maiden ceremony tonight. Boss Asakes, please excuse me. Wait, these guys, what about the corpses? Asakes was shocked. How could this guy still have the mood to be a judge at this time? Isn't he afraid of Balaam and the holy water? Boss Luo blinked his eyes and said, I've heard of a peculiar planting technique. It's said that corpses are actually a particularly good fertilizer that can make flowers bloom exceptionally brightly. Boss Arthaces, you can consider it. Can you not use such an innocent expression to talk about such terrible things? Then goodbye. Boss Luo bowed slightly. Since Dong Remy village, perhaps earlier, Mr. Asakes felt that as a traveler, whether it was Miss Yi or Mr. Luo, there was something wrong with them. They seemed to know a lot of things, but also seemed to not know a lot of things, although they were easy to get along with. Mr. Luo, Miss Yi, but if it was judged by the standard of a normal citizen of the Holy Light Kingdom or Freedom City, it seemed to be a little different. However, wasn't it too much to bury the corpse and use it as a flower mud? Oh, boss, do we really not need to inform the people in the city hall? The little maid Kalili asked in a trembling voice. After all, for people have died. Didn't you hear what Fash said? Boss Asakes said in distress. If we inform the city hall's master, then we really have to go to the detention room, and the final destination is probably the stake. But we can't just leave it like this, right? There is a way. Boss Asakes sighed at this time. There is a way. Ask Ludic to come. Principal? Boss Asakes nodded. As the saying goes, Ludic can't solve the problem. This is such a big problem, I can't bear it alone. I can't bear it. At this moment, the door of the mansion's lobby slammed open. Boss Asakes and K. Air Lily were startled at the same time, but they saw Mr. Bertrand. He looked a little sulky at this time. That club is too slippery. They began to keep a distance from me as soon as I went out, and then they disappeared. Were they? Bertrand was stunned at this time. How did these guys die? You killed them. Quite cleanly. But this technique is still lacking. Practice more when you have time. Bertrand, will you not speak of such dreadful things with such a light face? Said the mademoiselle, shivering. Also, Boss Asakes slapped his forehead and sat down weakly. As if his body was hollowed out, he muttered to himself, I think I will go crazy sooner or later. Kay or Lily, give me the phone. Oh, okay, right away. And I'm fine, Mr. Asakes. In front of the big house of the Welfare Institute, Sister Serene was pushing the bicycle. Mr. Asakes answered the phone and asked about the seriously injured person. Sister Serene felt that it was okay to tell Mr. Asakes that the seriously injured person had been sent to Scholar Calvin's house, so she didn't hide it. Now he is at my teacher's house. That guy is my teacher's nephew? I have never heard of him. Mr. Asakes, it's nothing. Since he has been sent to Scholar Calvin's house, then there is no problem. Thank you, Sister Celine. I'm afraid I won't be able to find time to go to the Welfare Institute during this period, but if there is any problem, you can still tell me. Okay, Mr. Asakes. By the way, before Sister Celine could finish her words, the phone was hung up. She looked at the phone screen and couldn't help but be stunned. Mr. Asakes, there should be no problem, Sister Celine shook her head. For her, the things that happened the past night were quite strange, so strange that she could clearly smell danger. She couldn't get involved in too many troublesome matters, or else the children in the Welfare Institute will be taken care of. She didn't even tell Scholar Calvin about the strange boy, the church, and the strange 36-winged angel statue because she didn't want to get involved in more danger. Although she could feel that the Calvin scholar might know something about the strange church and the boy named Medanzo, she didn't know what he was talking about. Sister Celine. A child's clear voice suddenly interrupted Sister Celine's thoughts. She turned around and saw that Kelly and Diana, who were among the children in the Welfare Institute, had appeared in front of her, hand in hand. Sister Celine squatted down and reached out to pinch the two children's cheeks. Didn't I tell you to wait for me at home? Don't run out. Kelly, what did you eat? Why is your mouth so oily? Hee hee. Kelly quickly said. Kelly didn't steal the honey in Sister Celine's room. This is the roast chicken sent by a kind person. It's very fragrant. Kelly, Deanna, and everyone else likes it. A kind person? Sister Celine couldn't help but be stunned and frown. Deanna quickly grabbed Sister Celine's hand and brought her to the Welfare Institute's big house. A kind person is in the yard playing games with us, and he said he's your friend. Sister Celine, come quickly. Hey, don't run. Be careful not to fall. Even so, Sister Celine became more and more confused. Her friend? Other than Mr. Arthaces, she didn't have any other friends in Freedom City. Who could it be? Could it be those guys who tried to catch Robert last night? Did they get together, or did they find out about the Welfare Institute? Sister Celine instantly became nervous. The moment she entered the house, she picked up the broom, but she felt that the broom wasn't strong enough, so she ran into the kitchen and took the pan, holding it tightly. Sister Celine took a deep breath and mustered her courage to rush into the yard. If there's anything, come at me. These children are innocent, you thugs. PR principal. In the yard, the principal of Freedom City, Ludic, was playing the role of an eagle and playing the game of chicken claw with the children. As for Laval, who was always inseparable from Ludic, he was playing the role of an old hen. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Sister Celine in shock as she waved her frying pan around. Blink! Ludic touched his face and said in a deep voice, "It seems that my role as an eagle isn't bad. Do I look like a thug?" He squeezed his face and made a ferocious expression, making the children laugh. Sister Celine could only smile embarrassedly and hide the pan behind her back. Tea. Principal. After Sister Celine served the tea, she stood aside anxiously. Ludic turned the teacup and said with a smile, "Celine, you've been absent from school for almost a year, right? You haven't come to school since the last Holy Maiden ceremony." Sister Celine opened her mouth and said with a bitter smile, "I'm sorry. I know what I'm doing is wrong. But if it's possible, please let me withdraw from school, Mr. Principal." Withdraw? Why do you want to withdraw? Ludic shook his head. If you withdraw, where can I find people to participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony? What? Sister Celine was stunned. Didn't I already? You didn't participate in the parade, right? Ludic said casually, "Asakes, that poor guy, can't even take out the money to sponsor you to participate in the parade. So, you're going to give up?" "I'm not." Ludic clapped his hands, and Laval walked in with a big box and opened it in front of Sister Celine. Inside the box were several exquisite and gorgeous outfits. "I prepared everything for you." Ludic said directly, "I hope to see you tonight, Celine. Also, if you work hard this time, I'll sponsor this orphanage and help you get a business license, even if the children here can't pray." Chapter 21:30. You killed these people? You're quite nimble. It seems like you have done this a lot. Hearing this, Mr. Asakes almost pressed the guy in front of him onto the sofa and strangled his throat. Ludic, this guy grew up with him as a child, but now their paths were completely different. Don't mess around. I have something more important to tell you. The principal had just arrived at the Rose Mansion. Originally, according to his schedule, he was supposed to return to the City of Freedom Academy after leaving the orphanage, but he was called by Asakes. He used that kind of "if you don't come, you will regret it." Humph. This kind of tone. In fact, the principal had come because he felt that Arthaces' final word was very spiritual. His heart had been touched, so he had come. Mr. Asakes directly pulled Ludic into the side hall. "Mr. Levi, please have some tea." "Thank you, Miss Kay or Lily." Levi sat down and looked at Kay or Lily. Then he suddenly said, "It seems like you don't want to accept the principal's suggestion, right? How did you know?" The maid was surprised. Levi said calmly, "If you agreed, you wouldn't look so relaxed. Instead, you would look more nervous." Kay or Lily subconsciously touched her face. This kind of thing could be seen from her expression. "It's good that you don't agree." Levi shook his head. "Just pretend that this didn't happen. It's good for everyone." Kay or Lily hesitated and asked in a low voice, "But will the principal blame me? He doesn't only have one choice." Levi said casually, "Of course, if you agree, he will have two choices, and it will be safer." Kay or Lily couldn't help but bitterly smile. The world of adults is really complicated. The world of adults is not complicated. However, Revere said, the world of the adults is just more direct. Oh right, we're the guests of the mansion. Are they all gone? Kay or Lily couldn't help but reveal a distressed expression. She sighed and said, how should I say this? In short, we don't have a right to ask where the guests are going. The boss of Arthaces had always been abiding by a basic rule. He ran a hotel. When the guests came, they would check in. When the guests wanted to leave, they would check out. He would not take the initiative to ask the guests where they were going during the day. He would just keep the lights on in the main hall of the mansion. Either it was Kay or Lily or himself. There was always someone waiting to open the door. After about 20 minutes, Mr. Assakes and the principal came out of the room. The campus principal looked the same as he did when he entered. Only Mr. Assakes seemed to be rolling his eyes. Revere, call a few people over and deal with these bodies, the campus principal said directly at this moment. What surprised Khalili was that Mr. Levar did not hesitate at all when he heard her order. He immediately made a call. This was a corpse, not some random object. Only Mr. Assakes frowned and asked, deal with? How are you going to deal with it? The campus principal said indifferently, since you came to me to deal with this matter, then you shouldn't ask how I deal with it. Otherwise, you can only find someone else, the poor Assakes. Mr. Assakes felt that when this guy entered the door, he should be the one holding him in a chokehold. Soon, a car came to the entrance of the mansion, an ambulance. Several guys wearing full protective suits came down from the car. They directly moved the bodies of Fash and the others and quickly left. The whole process took less than 5 minutes. Assakes glanced at the logo on the ambulance. He knew where Ludic was going to move the bodies. A hospital, and a hospital under the name of Ludic's family, perhaps a morgue. I haven't been here. I haven't seen you either. When saying goodbye, Mr. Assakes and Ludic said to each other tacitly, Kay or Lily, you look after the house. I have something to do and have to go out. After a while, Assakes said to the little maid of the mansion, if something dangerous happens, don't hesitate and run directly to Miss Yuye's room. I don't know if she can do it, Mr. Assakes said seriously at this time, but if she is disturbed, I think she will probably react. Well, you can even say, someone is talking bad about Mr. Luo, Miss Yuye, like this. I think the person who will be killed may be me. Mr. Assakes still went out. The little maid of the mansion could only nervously grab the broom and squat at the counter in the lobby. Her eyes kept glancing at the room upstairs of Miss Yuye. Welcome. May I ask how I can help you? Aren't you the one from yesterday? In the clothing store, the tailor, Miss Assman, who was using a steam iron to tidy up the clothes, heard the noise. The moment she turned around, she saw the customer who only bought one button yesterday. Sorry to disturb you again, Miss Assman, Boss Luo said with a smile. Miss Assman paused and immediately put down the iron in a hurry. After wiping her hands on her waist, she said, not at all. How can I help you? Boss Luo took out a camera and smiled. It's like this, I actually came to the City of Freedom as a traveler. I want to take a set of photos about the culture of the City of Freedom. I hope Miss Assman can let me visit some of your shops and studios. As a century-old shop, there must be a lot of things that have witnessed the history of the City of Freedom. There were many people who asked her to make clothes, and there were even some who wanted to pursue her. However, this was the first time she met someone who wanted to visit her shoot, so she couldn't help but hesitate. Sir, could it be that you're one of those travel reporters? Something like that. Boss Luo said, I do have the habit of recording interesting things on the road. Is it difficult for you? Miss Assman thought for a moment and shook her head. Not really. The order for the Holy Maiden ritual is almost finished, and I have some free time now. Come with me. No hurry, I want to start with the shop, Boss Luo said. Is the decoration here the same as before? Yes, except for the facade that has been renovated several times. Most of the decorations and furniture in the shop haven't changed much except for maintenance. At least, it has been like this since my father took over. Boss Luo kept fiddling with the camera in his hand, looking very professional. An old photographer. Miss Assman suddenly had this thought. This is okay. Can I take a look inside? Oh, okay, this way, please. This was the first time Miss Assman encountered such a situation, so she couldn't react in time. Logically speaking, she should have rejected him, but why did she agree so quickly and so naturally? With this doubt in her heart, Miss Assman led Boss Luo further into the shop. The living room, and the studio. This place directly formed Miss Assman's entire life. In the workshop, Miss Assman was introducing the tools that had basically been eliminated by the times. Every one of them was quite old. Although they were old, they were well maintained. This was an unusually clean studio, and it exuded a delicate femininity unique to women. By the way, I just remembered something, Miss Assman suddenly said. Boss Luo gave her a please continue look. Miss Assman hesitated for a moment, then silently took out a thick photo album from the bookshelf at the side. There's a photo that I want you to take a look at. Perhaps you can answer some of my questions. As she spoke, Miss Assman carefully took out an old photo from the album. This person in the photo, the reason why she had to be careful was because the photo itself was a piece of glass. She looks like my female companion from yesterday, right? Boss Luo directly said after taking a look. Miss Assman nodded. Yes, they are very similar. Even their body shapes are basically the same. But this photo album has been passed down since my grandfather. Before my grandfather, I don't even know how long it has been in existence. This is a work of wet photography. It can be maintained for at least 100 years. Boss Luo smiled slightly. 100 years is enough to show its value. Miss Assman shook her head. I don't know much about this. I only know how to tailor clothes. Boss Luo said casually. Since this photo could be from 100 years ago, Miss Assman, do you think it has anything to do with my female companion? That's true. Miss Assman nodded. Maybe I'm thinking too much. It's not like there aren't any similar people in the world. Sorry for troubling you, sir. Miss Assman, can you transfer this photo to me? Boss Luo suddenly asked. Transfer? Boss Luo nodded. Since the lady in this photo is so similar to my female companion, I think it will be a very good surprise. Miss Assman shook her head. Sir, you're very good to your female companion. I'm really touched. However, this is a family heirloom. Although it's not valuable, I think I have the obligation to preserve it. You've decided so quickly, Miss Assman, Boss Luo said. Since I said transfer, don't you want to hear my price? This, Miss Assman frowned, but still said patiently, Okay, sir, what price do you plan to offer? What do you think of this thing? Boss Luo pointed at the workbench beside him. Miss Assman looked over subconsciously. When did this box appear? Why didn't I know? She looked at this strange, traveling photographer hesitantly. Open it and take a look, like a whisper from the depths of her heart. Miss Assman subconsciously walked to the workbench and slowly opened the box in front of her. This is the shoe? She saw what was inside the box. It was a pair of shoes, a pair of delicate, transparent glass shoes. This pair of shoes has a magic attached to it. It can make you stand out. Boss Luo's voice sounded softly. But the magic will lose effect at midnight. Of course, if you use it well, maybe it can make you do something you want to do. Sir, you really know how to joke. Miss Assman shook her head. But when she turned around, she found that Boss Luo had disappeared. She was shocked and hurried to the table where the photo album was placed, but she found that the photos in the album were not missing, especially the photo made of glass, which was intact. Miss Assman frowned and quickly walked out of the workbench. But she couldn't find him even after searching inside and outside the clothing store. She could only return to her workbench with a puzzled expression. At this time, Miss Assman subconsciously looked at the box. The pair of glass slippers was still here. Glass shoes with magic. Cinderella's glass shoes? Miss Assman shook her head, thinking that this was a bit strange. She closed the box and put it aside. She planned to return it to this strange photographer the next time she met him. He should be back, right? Miss Assman thought and walked out of the workbench. Creak! The door closed slowly. But when the door was completely closed, it suddenly opened again. Miss Assman walked quickly to the box and pressed her hands on it. She bit her lip, and her fingers quickly tapped on the box. Her gaze shifted, and Miss Assman seemed to have made a decision. She opened the box again, and then carefully picked up one of the glass shoes. She put the glass shoes under the light, and her eyes gradually blurred. It's okay to try it, right? Anyway, I won't really wear it out. Mr. Arthasheth wore a windbreaker and a hat. He put his hands in his pockets and paced back and forth in front of an old small building. No one knew why he was hesitating. He raised his head from time to time and looked at the attic of the small building. After a while, Mr. Assakes seemed to have made a decision. He didn't walk into the small building. Instead, he planned to leave. He turned around and left. But at that moment, the door of the small building suddenly opened. A guy wearing black clothes and a hood was standing in front of the door. Mr. Assakes couldn't help but frown. He looked around the street and then gritted his teeth and walked to the door of the small building. At the same time, he clearly saw the appearance of the hooded guy. It was a guy with an unbalanced complexion. His complexion was slightly rosy, while his complexion was slightly paler, as if he had just gotten a new skin. It was the guy with serious burns in front of the orphanage last night. The moment their eyes met, Mr. Assakes recognized the hooded man. "You are Robert, Teacher Calvin's nephew?" Mr. Assakes asked tentatively. "Please come in." The hooded man just nodded slightly. "Mr. Calvin said you would be back soon and asked me to wait for you here." Mr. Assakes blinked and said coldly, "I don't want to go in now." The hooded man's face was expressionless. He just turned around and walked into the building without closing the door. Mr. Assakes shrugged and muttered, "Seems like a guy without a sense of humor. You're the one with the skin." This was the first sentence that Mr. Assakes said to Scholar Calvin after seeing him. Chapter 21:31. Assakes did not like to drink black coffee. He liked the sweet taste. However, Mr. Calvin had always been very materialistic. He took a sip of the coffee made by Mr. Calvin and frowned because of the bitter taste. Robert was standing behind Calvin at that moment, looking straight ahead. "I know you came to me because of Robert." Mr. Calvin thought for a while and said, "But before I answer you, tell me, how much do you know, Assakes?" "Not much." Mr. Assakes shook his head. He looked at Mr. Calvin's expression and said, "But it should be quite a lot. For example, holy water." There was a slight change in Calvin's expression. "How much do you know about the holy water?" Mr. Assakes took a deep breath and said, "I wasn't sure before I came, but now, I think I know less than you, Mr. Calvin. That day will eventually come." Scholar Calvin sighed and said, "Before we discuss the issue of the holy water, Arthasheth, do you know why I wanted to travel to unknown places?" "I know." Mr. Assakes nodded. "You have a lot of free time?" Calvin could not help but open his mouth. Then, his eyes widened in an unusually stern manner. Mr. Assakes felt that his stern look was nothing compared to Miss Yes. He smiled and said, "Yes, Mr. Calvin." Mr. Calvin said, "I want to find Master Marianne's footprints." Someone who could be called a master by Mr. Calvin? Mr. Assakes could not help but ask, "Mr. Calvin, who is this Master Marianne?" 200 years ago, there was a large-scale rebellion in the City of Freedom. In this turmoil, a large number of academic works were burned, hundreds of scholars were thrown into prison, and some were even burned at the stake. Their descendants were defined as the bloodline of sinners and exiled to a barren land outside the 7 capitals. I've told you about this part of history, haven't I? Arthas nodded. Soon after, he thought of something. Then this Master Marianne. Could it be that she was part of that turmoil? Master Marianne is the source of that rebellion. Mr. Calvin said seriously, at that time, she published an academic work. However, this work did not bring her honor. Instead, it brought her disaster. What about this work? It has something to do with holy water, Mr. Calvin said seriously. It might even be the method to make holy water. We were able to discover from some of the remaining information that holy water seems to have the ability to help people increase the level of divine favor and even the level of praying and sanctification. Mr. Assakes remembered Fash's description of holy water. This thing could even allow people with sinners' bloodlines to regain the ability to pray. It can increase the level of divine favor and even the level of praying and sanctification. Isn't this a good thing? Why is it forbidden and even regarded as heresy? Mr. Asakes could not help but shake his head. Whether it's the level of divine favor or the level of praying and sanctification, it's actually a reference to measure our devotion to faith. Scholar Calvin said, it also indirectly shows the problem of our loyalty to the saints. If the standard is not raised by the sincerity of one's heart, but by borrowing external forces, then is the meaning of faith still there? Mr. Asakes began to understand the seriousness of the matter. This kind of false faith is obviously not something that the Supremes are willing to accept. Mr. Calvin sighed and said, but the reality is that praying by consuming holy water can produce even purer willpower. Pure? How is that possible? Mr. Asakes could not help but be shocked. Teacher, didn't you just say that this is a false faith? That's right. Because of this, it's ironic. Mr. Calvin smiled bitterly. We pray devoutly every day, and the ascetics even admonish themselves for many years. But the result is not comparable to some things that are obtained without any effort. Then, what is the meaning of faith to the Supremes? Mr. Asakes was silent. The appearance of holy water could greatly increase the production of willpower, but it also implied that it would shake the foundation of the Supremes as the object of faith. It was an extremely sharp double-edged sword, and it was extremely dangerous. If that's the case, then teacher. Mr. Asakes suddenly looked up. Why do you still want to look for the thing left behind by Master Marianne? You want to make holy water too? I do want to make holy water. Mr. Calvin nodded slowly. Mr. Asakes suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Teacher, this joke of yours is the worst joke I've heard this year. I hope you can say it again. His eyes were like a cheetah's as he stared at his teacher. I want to make holy water, Mr. Calvin said calmly. Mr. Asakes was still staring at Mr. Calvin, but his eyes gradually became blurry. He shook his head hard and felt a strong sense of dizziness. Thump! He fell head first onto the ground. Mr. Calvin sighed slowly and said in a low voice, Only when you learn how to make holy water can you find. Mr. Calvin slowly stood up and looked at Mr. Robert behind him. Mr. Robert, I brought you out of the sinful land and spent 10 years to get you close to Balaam. Now, we can finally find a glimmer of hope, right? Yes, Mr. Calvin. For 10 years, I used holy water without hesitation. I finally found Balaam's secret. Then, we have one last thing to do. Mr. Calvin nodded and looked at Mr. Asakes on the ground. His eyes gradually focused. Prove that the sage is wrong. The cherrywood roulette was spinning crazily. Small white balls were bouncing on the roulette. The people around the roulette were shouting crazily. Nan Xiaonan was among them. Like the gamblers around her, she was shouting loudly. She had lost almost all her money so far. She only had this crystal card with willpower that was deducted after she bought the bread last time. She didn't know if she didn't gamble, but after she gambled, she realized that the willpower in this crystal card was a huge sum of money. As the saying goes, wealth comes from happiness. Lady Nan, who lost all her money in the last round, was soon squeezed out by the gamblers. Her eyes were unfocused, and she sat in the corner blankly as if her body had been hollowed out. It was a very secluded place. There was a casino here with many projects. The reason why she was able to come here was that she had worked hard on the food stall owner for most of the night. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't that kind of competition. She just continued to discuss her gambling experience with the food stall owner. They even had a feeling of regret that they didn't meet earlier. In the end, the food stall owner slapped his thigh and resolutely brought Nan Xiaonan to this place where money was squandered. There was actually such a place in the Freedom City that stimulated the primitive desires of human beings. At first, Nan Xiaonan didn't believe it, but now that she had lost all her money, she had to believe it. Those masters from the public security office didn't do anything. When she was at the airport, they would arrest anyone who threw rubbish, okay? Lady Nan, why don't you continue to play? At this time, the owner of the food stall came to Nan Xiaonan's side with a smile. It was unknown whether this guy did it intentionally or unintentionally, but he was actually holding a lot of chips. It looked like he had just won them. I lost all my money, Nan Xiaonan said with an unlucky face. If I continue to gamble, I can only lose my underwear. Your underwear isn't worth much. The food stall owner was still smiling. At least, it's the kind that isn't popular. Then there's no other way. Nan Xiaonan shrugged. I can only leave. I'll come back when I have money. This place, I'll definitely come back to take revenge next time. The food stall owner suddenly said, Hey, Lady Nan, you don't have to be so anxious. You know what happens on the gambling table. That was then and this is now. Maybe you can make a comeback in the next round? Nan Xiaonan squinted her eyes and said, Can you pawn your underwear here? If you can, I'll go and make a comeback. With that, Lady Nan didn't say anything and reached out to grab the chips in the food stall owner's arms, just like a hungry dog snatching food. That won't do. This is what I won. Bam! Don't bite me. You're really a dog. The food stall owner was shocked. You just want the funds to make a comeback. There's a way. There's a way. What way? Nan Xiaonan suddenly stopped. The food stall owner said, There's a way that you can try. Although I don't know if it will work in the end, follow me first. Nan Xiaonan nodded doubtfully. Soon, under the guidance of the food stall owner, they quickly walked out of the room. The food stall owner said, Actually, this place treats those generous customers very well. I see that you can even lose an entire petitioner's crystal card of power of will. Here at the casino, you will definitely be very welcome. I feel like you're King mocking me. That's not what I meant. The food stall owner said with a fearful face. But for generous customers, this place really treats them very well. Here, it's here. You can go in by yourself. It's up to you whether you can make it or not. With that, the food stall owner pushed open a door. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked in. She found that this was a relatively ordinary study. In the study, there was a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes. In addition, there was a young lady with a hot body who didn't look like a decent person. After the food stall owner pushed open the door, he quickly greeted the people inside and turned around to run away. Nan Xiaonan was startled. She immediately raised her head, puffed out her chest, and tentatively walked into the study. I'm the manager here. The man made a gesture of inviting her to sit. You can call me Mr. Agent. Mr. Agent? Nan Xiaonan frowned, but also sat down. You mean this casino is not yours? You can call me Mr. Agent. The manager, Agent, smiled at this time. I heard that you want some funds, right? That guy brought me here at your behest, right? Nan Xiaonan sneered at Yishuan. Agent said, For everyone who enters here, we will strictly check them. After all, we also have to ensure the safety of the guests here as much as possible. Madam, please let me see your destiny. Not too much, just a page of personal information will do. I'm more curious about who can have such a high number of petitioners' crystal card. Nan Xiaonan was silent for a moment. Then, she coldly glanced at the secretary with a hot figure behind the agent. The secretary was looking at her with a smile, but she was holding a fruit knife in her hand and seemed to be picking her nails. Nan Xiaonan shrugged and waved her hand in front of her. The fake destiny system produced by Miss Maid slowly unfolded. The agent waved his hand at this time, and the female secretary nodded. She walked directly to Nan Xiaonan and began to observe carefully. At this time, Nan Xiaonan was somewhat nervous. Who knows if this fake product can withstand it? Soon, the secretary withdrew her gaze, but looked at Nan Xiaonan with a surprised expression. Then, she returned to the side of the agent and whispered something. After a while, the agent frowned. Nan Xiaonan felt that things were getting a little bad, so she wanted to grab the pen on the table, but the agent showed a bright smile at this time. It turns out that you're a member of that family. No wonder you have such a high number of crystal cards. I'm sorry, Lady Nan. This is just a necessary procedure. I hope you can know that we have always been very considerate to our valuable guests. A member of that family? Which family? Nan Xiaonan remembered that the fake destiny system given by Miss Maid gave her the identity of a village girl living in a rural area. So, Nan Xiaonan frowned subconsciously. The agent smiled and said, The problem of funds is not a problem at all. As long as Lady Nan can sign this contract, it will be fine. An exquisite document suddenly opened in front of Nan Xiaonan. She picked it up and looked at it carefully. I voluntarily obey the arrangement of the casino, including but not limited to participating in the research and development of new projects until the debt is paid off. So, what is the research and development of new projects? The agent said, since we run a casino, Lady Nan, what do you think the new projects will be? Of course, it is a project to better serve customers. Oh, Nan Xiaonan suddenly sneered. Do you think I'm stupid? I'll just stop gambling. Goodbye. Nan Xiaonan stood up and turned to leave. But at this time, outside the door of the study, there were already 4 strong men. Nan Xiaonan blinked her eyes. Isn't this script a bit old-fashioned? As long as it is useful, the agent said with a smile. So Lady Nan attacked without saying anything. Then Lady Nan was carried back. I thought you had some skills, but it seems that you were just SOSO. Then the agent grabbed her finger, dipped it in Indonesian, and pressed it on the contract. Take her away. You can't do this. You will be sent to the stake. Lady Nan finally screamed at the top of her lungs. Chapter 2132. The place where she was thrown down was similar to a dungeon. The posture was wild goose landing on flat sand, XX upward. Lady Nan quickly got up, rubbed her chin, and then symbolically cursed a few words to greet the men in the house. After getting no response, she began to look around. Don't shout, it's useless. Those guys won't pay attention to you. You are? There were quite a few dungeons, at least 100 or so square in size. At this moment, there were a few lonely figures curled up at the edge. They were all women, and their expressions were lifeless, as if they were empty shells. At this time, a woman quickly walked in front of Nan Xiaonan from the darkness. Different from the other women, although this woman looked haggard, at least her eyes were somewhat lively. It was also this woman who talked to Nan Xiaonan at the beginning. How long have you been locked up here? Were you also caught by the casino's agent? Lady Nan quickly asked. I can't think of anyone else except that guy. The woman smiled bitterly. You're good, really. At least I've seen a lot of people who were caught here. You're the only one who is so calm. After all, she came here with a purpose. Otherwise, this mature woman would have lost all her money and almost pawned her underwear. How could she be so free? It seemed that she had caught a good fish. Nan Xiaonan hugged her arms and gently rubbed them. She seemed a little cold. She asked in a slightly nervous voice, What is this place for? What will those guys do to me? Why are they like this? Soon, you'll become like them. Probably not long after, I'll also become like this. The woman shook her head. Don't stand here. Go to the side if you don't want to be splashed with food and then licked by the women here. Nan Xiaonan looked up at the entrance where she was thrown in. It seemed that there was only one exit in this dungeon. What's your name? Yulia, the woman said in a low voice. Perhaps you've heard of my name. This name sounded very familiar. Nan Xiaonan frowned and subconsciously said, the hot topic of this year's Holy Maiden ceremony, the 4th place of the previous ceremony. You're that Yulia? I'm just a prisoner now. The woman, or the girl who called herself Yulia, shook her head. What time is it? Has the Holy Maiden ceremony begun? We finished the parade yesterday. Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, Tonight should be the finals. You, how long have you been locked in here? A month or 2. Yulia shook her head and said with a complicated expression, The ceremony has already begun. It seems that I have no hope. You're already locked up in this place, and you still have the mood to think about the ceremony? Yulia sighed and said, If I don't want to, I won't have any hope in my heart. I'm always praying that someone will save me before the ceremony begins. I've been hoping that I won't be driven crazy by this environment. Then, you heartlessly broke my hope. So don't ask me what time it is. The girl who called herself Yulia silently sat back in the corner and hugged her knees. No one knew what she was thinking. She was the only one who could communicate with. Lady Nan had to sit beside her. What have they been through? Yulia said, I don't know. I don't even know what I've been through. As she said, she pointed at one of the walls and said slowly, There's a door on the wall that will open every once in a while. Then someone will come in and take away 1 or 2 people each time. We'll be taken to a very bright room and then fall asleep. When we wake up, we'll come back here again. Nan Xiaonan frowned and listened carefully. Yulia's voice became more and more sorrowful. Basically, all of our cognition is trapped in this dungeon. As you can see, this is not a place that can make people feel at ease. The girls here, after a long time, gradually become like this. But they definitely can't go crazy, because crazy girls will be taken away and never come back. They're no different from being crazy now. Nan Xiaonan shook her head. Maybe they just didn't shout and scream, but they had already lost their minds. Nan Xiaonan then asked Yulia some more questions, but it was of no help to the current situation. This girl, after knowing that the Holy Maiden ceremony had begun, her mood began to become unstable. She didn't want to comfort Yulia. Instead, she walked directly to the wall that could open the door, knocked on it, and put her ear to listen. There was no sound outside. Nan Xiaonan frowned. She looked around and quietly pressed her palm on the wall. In an instant, Lady Nan's palm began to fog slowly. The fog of her palm blended into the wall at once. It works. The fog of the Black Soul Envoy. Lady Nan suddenly narrowed her eyes and licked her lips. She put more strength into her arm and directly inserted it into the wall. Then, her arm was stuck in the wall. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help blinking her eyes. Why was the ability of the Black Soul Envoy so difficult to use? She didn't think that she had only become a Black Soul Envoy for a few days, and she didn't even take the initiative to exercise. Miss May didn't arrange an internship for her, nor did she arrange other Black Souls to teach her. This fog of her ability was comprehended by herself. In Dong Remy village, she almost drained her spiritual power to fight against the Dragon Witch, and this ability was unlocked. What are you doing? This door can only be opened from the outside. Don't waste your strength. Yulia's voice came from behind. Lady Nan pulled her arm out of the wall. She shrugged and sat down directly against the wall, then closed her eyes. Yulia didn't pay attention to her and just buried her face between her knees. The vision here was dim. What she didn't know was that Nan Xiaonan's skin began to move slowly. In the dark room, Mr. Agent was contacting a very important person to him. But in fact, Mr. Agent hadn't been able to contact that person for several days. Even now, the Holy Fall happened in the Freedom City, but because of the appearance of the Supreme Beings and the Holy Maiden ceremony, there was no loss of control caused by the Holy Fall. But after all, it was good, except that he couldn't contact that person. Everything seemed to be peaceful. The special communication device in the dark room still didn't work. This was probably another day where he couldn't contact that person, the real owner of the casino. He didn't dare to guess if there was something wrong with that person, so he couldn't contact him. For the agent, the only thing he could do now was to operate the secret casino as usual. Since that person didn't give any instructions before they lost contact, it meant that there was no problem in operating the casino as usual. The agent soon returned to the study room. In fact, the dark room was also in the study room, but it was separated by a secret door. How was that, Lady Nan? The agent looked at the secretary calmly. Except for a few words at the beginning, it seems to be quite peaceful now. The secretary thought for a while and said, "But since this woman is from that family, isn't it a bit risky for us? Since there is no problem with fate, it doesn't matter." The agent shook his head. Since she is only from the branch family of the Mother of Saints, not many people will care about her. Even if they find out, it will be a long time later. Besides, the City of Freedom Academy isn't peaceful now. Mr. Campus Principal is probably in a terrible situation. How can he have the time to care about a distant relative who ran away from his hometown? You know, everyone's eyes are focused on the ceremony, waiting for the resurrection day. Besides, since this woman is here, we can't let her leave, no matter whether she did it intentionally or not. What do you plan to do with her? Since there's a new one, what do you think we should do with her? The agent suddenly sneered. I know what to do. The secretary nodded. The agent stood up and walked to the mirror. He tidied up his clothes and said with a smile, I will leave this matter to you for now. I should also prepare to attend the final of the Holy Maiden ceremony as a judge. In the dungeon, Lady Nan slowly opened her eyes. She stealthily flipped her palm, only to see that her palm was already able to switch between virtual and real with great proficiency. Nan Xiaonan lightly laughed. This unique ability was extremely strange and powerful, even to the extent of being immune to almost all physical attacks. Although this ability was far beyond her imagination, it wasn't hard to master it after she mastered the method. After all, She came out of the subworld of annihilation. No matter how bad her understanding of power was, she was much better than many people. As for the further development of the black soul body, she could only leave it for later. Currently, she had mastered the ability to turn into mist, which was enough for her. She rubbed the bangs on her forehead and thought about her next move. In fact, she still hadn't found the right direction. Even though she had slipped out of the mansion for a long time, the boss didn't seem to want to call her back. The degree of freedom was indeed high. While pondering, Nan Xiaonan subconsciously glanced at Yulia, who was curled up in a corner. Yulia, according to the food stall owner, was a hot contender for the Holy Maiden ceremony this time. The odds were even 1-0-3, which was good just by looking. Wait! Nan Xiaonan suddenly stood up and walked quickly to Yulia. Hearing the movement, Yulia raised her head hesitantly, but her expression was gloomy. Are you really Yulia? Nan Xiaonan squatted down and stared at her. The popular candidate for the Holy Maiden ceremony? Not anymore. The girl said sadly. Those who can't attend the ceremony are nothing. If you're really Yulia, then who is the one outside? Nan Xiaonan's eyes suddenly narrowed. What did you say? Yulia, let's go for a float. Nan Xiaonan quickly said, yesterday there was a Yulia on the parade. Everyone on the street can prove it, but you can't prove yourself. So who are you? How can this be? How can I be on the parade? Impossible. Yulia shook her head. Absolutely impossible. Nan Xiaonan directly grabbed the girl's wrist and used a little force. Yesterday, were you taken out? Out of this dungeon? Yesterday. Yes. The girl thought for a while, but I didn't leave for long. It feels like... Nan Xiaonan wanted to ask something, but at this moment, a rumbling sound came from the dungeon. The girl who called herself Yulia was shocked and said with a trembling voice, "They are here." Not only this girl, but all the other women in the dungeon seemed to have a reaction to this sound. They curled up even more and even began to tremble. They almost buried their faces and didn't dare to look forward. The walls slowly moved away, and the strong light from outside penetrated into the dungeon. It was very dazzling. Several figures were standing in front of the open door. This one, and that one, bring them out. It was the voice of the enchanting secretary beside the agent. Lady Nin narrowed her eyes. She was one of the two people to be brought out. The other one was the girl who was still sober, Yulia. Seeing the two men walking into the dungeon, Nan Xiaonan quickly whispered in Yulia's ear, "Remember, if you feel desperate, call my name in your heart. The great witch of Xing Chuang." What? The girl looked at her strangely. At this time, Nan Xiaonan had already stood up, and with an unkind look on her face, she walked towards those two strong men. "You seem to have not been taught a lesson." One of the two burly men chuckled. He even cracked his knuckles, making cracking sounds. At that time in the study, Lady Nan was raped, and then she was carried back by the man who chuckled. At this time, Nan Xiaonan blinked her eyes at the two strong men and revealed a brilliant smile. Immediately, she raised her hands and said embarrassedly, "I surrender." The two men couldn't help but be stunned. The enchanting secretary in front of the door also couldn't help but open her mouth. The secretary suddenly frowned and said, "What are you doing? Hurry up." With that, the two men immediately stretched out their hands and grabbed Nan Xiaonan's arms. "Then do it quickly. Don't play any tricks on us, or you will suffer. Be gentle. I'm a girl after all." Her hands were tied behind her back. Seeing this, Yulia couldn't help but smile bitterly, but she saw Nan Xiaonan blinking at her at this time, and her lips moved slightly, as if she was saying, "Remember what I just said? She can't even protect herself.